That was Are You Repercussion Group. Welcome to the party, and welcome to Starfire Wolflair on this premiere episode on the Art Bell Radio Network. We are streaming here, and this particular show is being done on tape because the first couple ones, until we get the call-in situation set up with the network, we decided to tape the first show or two. But this way, we want to show you a couple examples of what we're going to be doing in the future. And we want to say that we're very appreciative to Art Bell and for his producer, Keith Rowland, for helping set this up. Art, as everyone knows, has been an inspiration for researchers, journalists, and radio hosts for decades. He almost invented the medium himself. He definitely invented and reinvented nighttime radio. His nighttime banter, his insightful questions, his range of topics and humor, of course, along with his very sexy late-night voice, it soothed the sleepy, it caffeinated the nation's interstate traffic from coast to coast, and most importantly, what Art always taught everyone was that you challenge you listeners, you challenge your listeners' depths and openness to theories and ideas and dreams and alternative realities. You know, you expand people and you help them grow, and that's an amazing thing that radio can do. And the internet and alternative news and radio can do so much to reach people, wake up and shake up the sheeple, but also just expand our own minds and get us into an interactive mode. And that is what we're going to be doing here at the Starfire Wolflair. Every Friday night we're going to be here, and we're going to be interactive as soon as we can. There's already the wormhole function set up at the artbell.com for the radio. It's like the Fast Blast that Keith had set up for another network, where you can write in and send in questions. And when we have the interactive shows in place, and we'll get more detail about that when we have those shows, the live shows on, you'll also be able to send me messages through my Facebook page, and you'll be able to send, if there's a chat set up on my website, you'll be able to do it there too. And let me explain, first of all, I am Carolyn Rose Goyda. I am not the important issue. I'm just the tool here to help you get the information. I've got a little bit of a diverse background. I worked at McDonnell Douglas for some years. I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of astronauts, cosmonauts, work on a lot of programs, worked in space, did work for the MIC for a while, got to learn a lot of things. I also took care of my parents at home for a while till they passed, so I have some hospice and home care experience. I also work with permaculture. I was a master gardener and developed some low water, low maintenance things. We can talk about that on some shows. And I was the Artificial Intelligence Fellow. I was a senior design engineer. I was a senior fiscal estimator. So I've had a little bit of experience. I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of amazing people. And anything you will find about me you like over the next shows, you need to thank my parents, the late Peter and Lucille Goyda. Anything good about me came from them. Anything bad is strictly my own. And we're going to do our best here to challenge you and to get you excited and to make Fridays fun. You know, we're going to try to have a very diverse setup. We're going to have both news and entertainment, which is going to inform, challenge, and inspire you if we can. Our current plans are to do a variety of shows where, like, 1 week we'll delve into current events, from politics to the latest scientific discoveries and revelations. We're going to connect with folks from around the globe, taking advantage of Google Plus and Facebook, which I'm on all the time. And do come there and join me. And it's just Carolyn Rose Goyda. You'll see me there. And there's also a Starfire Wolflair page. But I do post between 100 and 200 things a day. So you'll see the news there. And what we're going to try to get a hold of is the news that's been underreported, the news that hasn't been reported, or the news that has been misreported. You know, journalism is having a hard time now. Some of the toughest and best people are winding up having their cars exploded, drones knocking them out, fast-acting cancers, which are probably of the weaponized version, or unexplained heart attacks in young people. Journalism has become a very dangerous job, whether you're in the alternative or in the lamestream media, if you have the courage to tell the truth. Now, if you want to sit there like Dan Rather when he was paid to say how Kennedy's head flew forward instead of the truth when the Zapruder film came out and said that he flew backwards, or if you want to sit there and give the talking points that the two political parties, which I call the two-party crime syndicate, send out, or you only read the press reports from the White House instead of doing your own research, well, that's the lamestream media. But real journalists, it can be tough. And one of our first stories tonight, you're going to hear about someone who learned that. That's John Barbour. So hang on, we're going to get to that. But let me explain a little bit further that we're going to do that. We're going to have current affairs 1 week where we talk about things that are going on. And that's going to depend, too, on what is going to be if something significant happens. Obviously, if we have a Katrina, if we have another Fukushima, and frankly, Fukushima itself is still ongoing. We're going to have shows about that with Dr. Murray. We're going to have Gunderson on. We're going to talk about Fukushima. We're going to talk about solutions, though, not just the doom and gloom. We're going to talk about what you can do, what you can grow, what you can take to protect yourself, protect your kids, and how we stay up and informed. That's one side of that. And then we're also going to have, like I say, a second week where everything's going to be all things tinfoil. All the conspiracy things, which conspiracy is not a dirty word. All conspiracy means is 2 or 3, any more than one person getting together to conspire. It's not the crazy, tinfoil hat thing, but we're going to see that as a good word because it's a positive word in research and discussion because most things are involving a conspiracy. Most things are done with 2 people or a group. We have to understand that, and in doing so, we're going to wake up those sheeple, and we're going to expand the knowledge awareness and push that envelope, break through the veils of PR, propaganda, and the lamestream media hogwash. We're going to do that, and we're going to do a little bit of that every week. But there are going to be certain shows where that's where we stick to, okay? And then another week, the third week, will be all things entertainment because we need to have fun too, and we need to also enjoy ourselves. That's one thing Tesla, who's going to be somebody we're going to talk about a lot on this show. He not only invented alternating current, not only changed our world to electrify it and bring light to the darkness, he also talked a lot about the vibrations, the frequencies. He got involved with radio. He was the first man, not Marconi. Marconi used his pads. Marconi worked for him. He got involved with film. He wanted to do things with educating people with radio worldwide. With, Wardenclyffe was not only going to be energy distribution, it was going to be radio and information. Because there's so much magic and miracles in this world today, and it always has been. And we need to do that too. We need to enjoy ourselves because we need to stay positive because it takes positive energy to get a positive result in this world. We don't need all this negativity, the gloom and doom, the fear porn. We don't need that. So we are going to do things where entertainment, and that includes, we're going to do the newest Geek Squeak and the gadgets. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about internet shows, music, literature, and film. And like the recording that you heard at the beginning of the show, a lot of people don't know. That came from the Free Music Archive. We don't have ASCAP here yet, but the Free Music Archive is a non-profit digital library offering free and legal MP3s, and it's directed by WFMU, the most renowned freeform radio station in America. So these things are out there, and we're going to educate people about that. I want to talk to you on a specific show coming up in the near future about the BTU network. Brigham Young has its own television network. Did you know that? There's all kinds of them, and Brigham Young is not just going to be another Holy Roller station. They have got fascinating shows. I want to bring some characters on from there. I discovered a show on their network that you can watch live. They stream the shows, don't cost you a penny. One of them's called Granite Flats. It is it's a clean show. You can watch it with your family. You can let your kids watch it and not be afraid. It's cute. It's clever. It's a little Hardy Boys. But it's a little Eureka. It's got everything thrown into it, and it's got good acting, solid stories, great kids. Because the thing about entertainment, whether it's TV, whether it's film, there's several things that are absolutely critical. One is dialogue, and 2 is casting, and this show has both. And we're going to do shows on the Supernatural show, which is on the CW. That's a big thing with me. Our Wind Sisters and Hunters out there will understand, and the people on my page. I know I have girlfriends on Facebook from 5 to 105, which are dedicated Dean and Sammy friends, and we cannot forget Cass, and there's Crowley. We're going to bring them on. I've talked to Jim Beaver. He'll come on. We're going to bring some other people. We'll contact them during some of the big conventions for Supernatural, and then we can kind of bleed over, if you will, into the Vampire Chronicles and Twilight. We can bring up the other shows that have gone away, American Gothic, that shouldn't have. And there's other ones, too, and we can bring up those. We can talk about the ones that are on cable, the zombie shows and whatnot. But we're also going to talk about what's on PBS on those entertainment shows. There's some great stuff still out there. I grew up watching, Marlon Perkins, showing us animals, but PBS is still on there with Frontline and Nova and some of their specials. We want to highlight that. There's the Sundance Channel. There's so much out there that when people say, I don't have a TV, I don't want to do that. We want you listening to the radio, especially on Friday night. But there are good things still on TVs, and there are excellent films out there, films that can change your life. Everything from The Big Chill that makes you stop and think. And boy, look at that for casting. Even the dead guy was Kevin Costner. Okay? Then you've got incredible shows, even things like Rocky Horror Picture Show, which has become a phenomenon over decades. But then you have the movie JFK that moved them to get some of the Kennedy tapes released. That, the files. Of course, they're still not all released. And we're going to talk more about that JFK movie when I play the interview with John Barbour in a little bit. But there are things out there, even like Blade Runner. Which actually the best one I think Harrison Ford ever did. But then there's even like The Firm, makes you stop and think. The one Top Gun, it's just fun, but it also makes you realize guys are out there risking their lives. What are we doing this for? And then you've got Just a Few Good Men. There's some incredible things out there that are going on, and there's also a lot of independent movies, a lot of independent films that get overlooked. We're going to try to go to film festivals and bring some of that to you. Maybe we can bring some of the stars. We can play some of the audio for you. On the website, maybe we can show you some of the trailers. But there's so much out there. And like I said, once again, we're going to try to get the stuff that's underreported, not reported, or been misreported. All right? And that includes literature, too. Everything from Anne Rice to... I want to get Joseph Farrell on with his great books, Dr. Joseph P. Farrell. We want to get Jim Marrs on, talk about his books, everything from Alien Agenda to the Fourth Reich. And he's got his book about 9/11 is one of the best and has been overlooked because it got delayed by the publishers. There's a lot of things out there, and there's a lot of good novels and fiction out there, too. It is not all gloom and doom. We still have a miraculous miracle world, and we've got to share it and promote it to other people. And now the fourth week, we're going to cover alternative solutions. And that's going to be from energy to permaculture. We're going to be drawing on a wide pool of inventors, dreamers, engineers, scientists, innovators, from the shadows to the showroom, from the garages to the ivory tower, from the old to the new. And we are going to emphasize Tesla. And on my Facebook page, people know that every week I publish some other scientists that nobody knows about. The ones that we've forgotten. The ones that were intentionally left out of the textbooks because, the elite, the people running the show, do not want us aware of all the things out there. They just don't. They want to keep some of this technology suppressed. I've had it on my page, and I'll put it up on the new website when it comes up. Tesla and others showed wireless phones in 1904. Why do we have to wait to the 1980s? Why do we have to wait till James Bond's movie where you sit there and saw a walkie-talkie type phone? These things were available. They were kept for the military. They were kept for the elite. And God knows what they have now that we're not even aware of. But these things have been there. We could have had free energy if they'd have let Tesla finish Wardenclyffe. But like J.P. Morgan said, if I can't put a meter on it and charge it, I'm not going to sponsor it. But we're going to get into those solutions because we're going to talk about these. Everybody should have a small solar panel hooked up and ready. So in an emergency, whether it's an F4, F2 tornado, whether it's a Katrina, whether it's a Sandy, whether it's an earthquake like in the Philippines or the Oakland or God forbid the New Madrid fault finally goes off, or you just have a huge snow farm. And our national electrical grid, for those listening in the United States, we're in dire trouble. Everybody needs to have, and we're going to talk about how easy that is. We're going to bring on Reverend Rice. He's going to talk about it. He teaches the homeless to build these. You can make these cheap. It hooks up to car batteries. You save the energy, and it's at least enough to run a refrigerator or a fan in the heat. When the hot weather, a little heater in the wintertime. These things can mean the difference between survival. There were people floating and bloating in Katrina, and it's outrageous. That nobody should die from not having water. Everybody, every home on the globe should have an atmospheric water generator. And if that sounds bizarre to you, what it is basically, in the old days you used to go to a Sears catalog and order a dehumidifier. Draws the water directly from the air. So when your water system is polluted by a flood, by a hurricane, by an earthquake, by a gas leak, anything else, by fracking, There is no reason why every home, as they're set up, everybody doesn't have. And like I said, it's basically the guts are a dehumidifier. Drawing the water right out of the air. I've actually got a patent in myself. I'm going to put one out that's going to be cheap. There's the ones you can buy now. These people want to charge you $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. They don't care about the bulk of the people. They just want to make profits. There is no reason why you can't have the guts of a decent dehumidifier, one that's going to be there and soundly. And I want to make sure that these are made by people, whichever country. For the American people, I'd like it to be American-made. I'd like it to be people making a living wage, not some petty thing, not a couple pennies. And I don't want to be using junk material. We're not going to be using plastic. It's going to be using real things. But what you need is a dehumidifier and a water purifier. Some UV lights to clean. And I'd even thought ahead before we had Fukushima that you needed to think about getting radiation out of the air. Because Fukushima is not the only one. There's about 30 nuclear reactors leaking. And that's nothing new. Just like Horizon when BP had that tragedy, which is still ongoing in the Gulf, by the way. We're going to have shows about that, too. We're going to have the coastal warriors on. They're going to tell us what they've been finding. You know, the animals, the manatees, the poor baby dolphins that are dead, the mutated animals that are being found, the dead coral, the dead areas, the dead zones. But, you know, we're gonna show that because we're going to find solutions to it, though. There are ways. We can clean the water up. We can get water to everybody in an economical way. Everybody should have some free energy, and everybody should have a victory/survival garden. There is no reason why. I don't care if you live in an apartment. I don't care if you live in a trailer. I don't care if you're homeless. You can grow a tomato plant in a pot. You can grow enough greens and herbs in a pot. You can have a greenhouse. You can have a greenhouse tied to the solar panels. And there's also vibratory wind things, along with wind turbines, vibratory wind. I got another patent for that. We're working on that. We can have shows to talk about that. These things are important. And a little later on tonight, we're going to talk to something about mantle. That's another free energy approach. People that know Keith Hutchinson know that the Hutch effect is out there. We are going to address these things. We're going to get the solutions out there. We're going to have the people on that'll give you the references, give you the information, and tell you where to go, how to make these in an economical way. And what I want you to do is if you get something off the show and it helps you, share it with somebody else. Show it to your neighbor. Show it to your cousin. Show it to your uncle. Show it to the kids in your local school. Show it to the people in your church, in your synagogue, in your temple. We need to get people to take charge. Take the reins again and be in control of your life. We are not victims. The difference between pity and self-respect is getting off your butt and taking charge. We don't need all this negativity. It's positive energy that gets things done. It's love, it's respect for life, and positive energy. And that's what this show is going to be about every Friday. I want you to look forward to coming here. I'm going to get up for the show. I'm going to caffeinate and maybe have myself maybe a pale ale or maybe a bitters or something on the side. But we are going to be excited. And we're going to get people on here that also share that excitement. You know, even if we're giving the message about Fukushima, we're also going to have the solutions. Even if we're talking about the Gulf, we're still going to be talking about solutions. And there are solutions. Like, we're going to talk about how everybody out there, I don't want to hear about any of you not taking jury duty. Everybody out there better get off their butt and do jury duty in the United States. We're losing our right to a jury because they cannot fill juries, and they're using that as an excuse. When I worked at McDonnell Douglas, they would give us, defense contractor, you don't have to go. That is a sin and treason to me. No, you have a duty. And if we don't do jury duty, then you can't complain what these judges are doing or what the lawyers are doing. And what the lawyers and judges want to do is they want to plea bargain, which means innocent people have to accept pleas in order not to risk the maximum sentence, and guilty people get away. This is wrong. It shouldn't be how much justice you can afford. And I want everybody out there that ever listens to this show to learn the word jury nullification. We're going to teach that to people. That yes, a jury can decide that technically you are guilty, but the jury can nullify the law. That is true in the United States. They will not tell you that in the court. And I brought that up in court, and I'm telling you, they'll practically squirm underneath the chairs and the tables because lawyers are warned not to spread that. They don't want to lose their nice little cushy little position they're in, the power they have. Judges don't want to lose that power. These are lucrative positions, folks. You know, their kids get a job, their kid gets to be a judge, they get to retire early. You know, they get certain tax write-off, they got shield laws. Hey, they don't want us knowing that we can take back even our courtrooms without even having to vote. But in the meantime, you also want to pay attention. I don't want to hear these people say that voting's a waste of time. BS. We need to vote. We need to vote on the judges. If you're not sure, vote them out. I'm telling you, we got to change them. We don't have to need to somebody sitting in there. And what the heck is this with Joe Blow's daughter that got out of law school becoming a judge at 25, 26? We want people that have lived a life, actually had to do something, work to live and earn a paycheck. Not somebody that, well, my daddy was a lawyer or my daddy was a big shot. We're going to avoid that. That's why you got to vote. You got to pay attention to who those judges are. And you got to pay attention to who your councilman is, who your alderman is, because those are the people that are giving us municipal ordinance creep, that are taking away our rights, taking away our freedom in our homes. They're using ordinances to come on your property and violate the Third and Fourth Amendments. To come in there and without a search warrant, they can say, oh, public health, we smell feces. All they got to do is rub a little dog poo on your doorstep and they can walk right in your house. They can come in your house now if they want to count your cats, count your dogs, because they're limiting how many animals you can have. Do you know you cannot stop them if they say public health? And they can come and take your cat, take your dog, take your snake, take your fish, take your parakeet, take your goat, take your chickens, and kill them before you can run and get a court injunction to stop them. And it happens every day. We got to learn about this. We got to protect the people that are in these positions, that are losing their homes, losing their pets, losing their farms. These are important things we've got to do. And we got to get excited about it because you get empowered. You get your strength back and you get your own verb and excitement over the fact that we can make a difference and we will. That's what this show is going to be about. That's what the solutions are going to be about. And the permaculture goes even farther. We're going to get into aquaponics, which is where you have the fish and the plants. We're going to get into vermiponics, which is where you have the worms and the plants. Like I said, and there's no reason why everybody and their brother doesn't grow at least their own tomatoes, their own all kinds of types of lettuce and salads, all kinds of herbs, and if medical marijuana. Don't be buying garbage off the street. We got to push the people can grow their own plant if that's what they want to do. Seriously, folks. And there's so many things people can grow. And the point is, what you're going to do when you do that is you're going to get more organic, healthy plants. You're teaching your children, if you have them, respect for life and what it takes to grow your own food and what it takes to keep it healthy. And then you can share your surplus with your neighbor, your cousin, your sister, your brother, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever. You share, I've got tomatoes, you got squash, you got eggplant, I got watermelon, we got cantaloupe, I got kiwi. We can swap it all around. It also keeps the prices down. Because you're not going to have to just go get factory farm, sickening-looking eggs. You can have your own eggs that actually have an orange yolk that looks like a real egg yolk. You can have your own fresh carrots. You can have your own fresh popcorn. That'd be fun for the kids. Grow some popcorn in the summer. Put up some sunflowers. Have your own sunflower seeds. If not, leave it out for the birds. Birds will go nuts. And we're going to talk about how don't be trimming all your stuff into looking like balls and squares in your front yard. Oh, what is this, folks? We don't have plastic trees. You don't cut off all the edges. That's where the little blueberries are on the juniper. Those are what the birds eat in the winter. And then you wonder what happened to all our songbirds. Everybody trims their roses. Oh, we got to do it. It's fall. No, you don't. You leave the rose hips. That's where vitamin C comes from. That's what cardinals eat during the wintertime. And we're going to share that information. We're going to have everybody call in and give their ideas. How did they build something? Did they build something out of, pallets, the pallets that are made from good wood, not the ones that are treated with bad chemicals? How do you get rid of bugs in a safe way with baking soda and borax and other farms, lemon and basil leaves, instead of having to use horrible things that Monsanto or Mallinckrodt or Sigma Chemical or anybody else put together. And especially because most of this stuff is all petrochemicals. That's what's running this country. It's the oil and royal banksters and their fascist gangsters that are tied to the mob and basically interlocking international boards of corporations that make decisions that run our lives every day. They've made sure that petroleum is a monopoly. That's the reason why hemp, industrial hemp, which is an incredible crop, we're not talking about smoked dope every day. We're talking about industrial hemp that produces better material for blue jeans. It was a fuel that Henry Ford used in his cars. Even the cars were constructed from a hemp plastic matrix. Instead of a petroleum matrix plastic, it was hemp plastic. And it's stronger than steel. Hempcrete is stronger than concrete. And it's mold and mildew resistant at the same time. And it's lighter. It's amazing stuff. That's why they demonized hemp and changed the name to the spooky sounding marijuana, and all the women are going to have rolly heels and have sex with whoever's around if they smoke the blue smoke. They had to demonize it, and they paint that wide brush, even on industrial hemp, which you'd have to smoke an acre of it to get stoned, folks. But I'm telling you, hemp itself, we've got to push for this because the seeds are some of the most nutritious seeds on this planet. And you can grow 4 crops a year in the same area. It does not deplete. You do not need pesticides. You do not need fungicides. You can make paper that's more organically safe, not the wood paper that has to be bleached and produces mercury, which produces acid rain, which causes problems. That's why Bibles were written on hemp. That's why hemp was made into canvas. The United States Navy fought making hemp illegal because they wanted their canvas. They wanted their rope. Blue jeans originally were made out of this. When they wrote the Articles of the Confederation before the Constitution, it was on hemp paper. So we really have to take our time and educate people. This is not all about just smoking dope. We don't need everybody just getting stoned and driving or doing something stupid or getting drunk and driving. And speaking of drinking, we're going to talk about that too. We want people, make your own beer, make your own wine. We don't need all this pasteurized crap with sulfite in it and all this other drugs and chemicals they put in it. After they did Prohibition, and the reason they did Prohibition is that there was no, these guys didn't support temperance. They didn't care about that. Alcohol was also an alternative to petroleum, just like hemp fuel was. Every farmer could make his own fuel for his tractors and stuff right there on the farm. So they had to make it illegal because they knew it was competing, because Rockefeller made most of his money off the kerosene. He found a way. He paid his people, hey, what are we going to do with all this garbage, leftover, thick, gooey stuff? We'd only need the kerosene. That's how they came up with the formula for gasoline. Even though it's extremely toxic, creates a heck of a lot of pollution, both for water and the air. But, hey, this guy had a lot of waste product he wanted to use. And ironically, a lot of those waste products now become our pharmaceuticals. They became our nylon and rayon, which is why they had to get rid of hemp again. Another reason to get rid of it. Because we wanted to have cotton gins. Cotton needs more stuff, and it costs more, but that's okay. We'll replace it with petroleum-based rayon and synthetics and nylons, which take forever to degrade in the landfills. And then it begins to leach into the water aquifers. These are all problem-causing, not problem-solving, when hemp will solve problems. But remember, somebody starts getting down on you and you're saying, oh, you just want to smoke dope. Everybody that listens to this show, I want you to be able to remember and know and explain why industrial hemp needs to be made legal. We import industrial hemp from Canada and China right now. How insane is that? You can grow it in France, in Russia, in Poland, in Mexico, but you can't grow it in the United States. Why? Because it competes with the petroleum monopoly. Remember that and teach people that. That's more important right now than everybody just getting stoned on the weekend. We have a right to do our own recreations too. We should be able to grow a plant. You want to smoke, make some brownies, make some tea, whatever you want to do. You should be able to do that in the privacy of your own home. Don't be driving. You ought to be able to make your own beer, your own wine. buy some if somebody's doing the same, share some. We should be able to barter this stuff. Avoid all the chemicals. It's nobody's business. We need to be a libertarian about some of this because it's nobody's business. They don't need to be coming in your door to count your cats, count your dogs, or to see how many cans of beer you made or bottles of beer. So we got to stick up for each other, and those are some of the solutions we're going to get into. Now, a little bit about me. Right now, I'm the primary host of the Wolflair here. I'm Carolyn Rose Goyda. You can call me Carolyn Rose, whatever you want. Hey, you will do. And I do have a very active Facebook page. My last name is spelled Goyda. It's Carolyn Rose, Goyda. You can find that on the artbell.com page as well. There is a YouTube channel up for Starfire Wolflair of some older shows of where I've both been a guest and a host. There's also my own YouTube stuff up there. We're also going to be cleaning that up a little bit. I do not think I'll have the Facebook page up by the end of today, but it will be up by the next week's show. So there will be that, and I want to have that as an interactive thing too, but I want to keep the Facebook page, and after the show airs first, and always first on Art Bell. So you want to turn in here to get the first thing. You want to hear it first, you want to hear it, they're going to be live starting in the next 2-3 weeks. You want to be here on the Art Bell network at artbell.com. After that, it will be up on YouTube. It'll also be on Spreaker on Facebook, and it'll also be available on the Facebook page for the Starfire Wolflair. And it'll be interactive there. And we're going to try to get some sponsors that'll help us out, to help us do some research. And we're going to be bringing those people to you. And we're going to talk about one or two of those later tonight. But I want to bring that to you to keep that in mind. Now, if anybody wants to help, we will take help too. Anybody want to help with research? Anybody want to contact us about wanting to be on the show? You want to talk about, hey, I'd like to send some questions. I'm too nervous to call. Remember, when we start doing the interactive, there's going to be the wormhole section, which is like the fast blast that Keith had developed for another network, that you can send it in that way. Or you can send me before the show through Facebook. Or I have a yahoo.com as well. Carolyn Rose Goyda, no spaces, no dots, at yahoo.com. You can also send questions there. And you can also post some questions on the Starfire Wolflair page on Facebook. Or while we're on the air, I will have my Facebook page up as well during the live shows. And you can send me a question, or you can say, hey, I can't hear you, there's a problem. Or, hey, there's a glitch, there's this or that. So don't hesitate. We want this to be an interactive show. We really, really do. And if you have healthy products you want to promote, let us know. If you've got heirloom seeds you want to promote, let us know. We're gonna try to help that. If you have products that are solutions, let us know. If you have people you want us to interview, let us know. I've been trying to get a hold of. I have a tentative agreement that perhaps Mel Gibson will come on. He sounds like he's willing to come on. Michio Kaku is going to come on. Ralph Nader is going to come on. Judith Baker is going to come on. John Barbour is going to be a regular. There's a whole bunch of people. And I've got Daniel Ellsberg. I am trying to get everybody from Snowden. We're going to get Gunderson and Dr. Murray about Fukushima. But like I said, we're going to get some folks from Japan. But we're going to get them from around the globe. I've got a friend whose daughter goes into the area around Chernobyl. She goes in there on a motorcycle, taking recordings, looking around. He's a professor of both physics and biology. He's going to come on. He speaks 5 languages. I've got a friend in Greece. He's going to come on, an expat American who's got his own pages. A wonderful man in Korea I know who's like the Walter Cronkite of Korea is going to give us news from there. We're going to have people on my Facebook page. We had pictures of the earthquake at Christchurch before it was on the news. We had live webcam pictures of Fukushima, the tsunami, while it was happening on my page. We had pictures from Katrina until phones started to die. We've had pictures of the snowstorm going on. We've had pictures of the eclipses. And we had an ongoing debate going on my Facebook page at one point when Cynthia McKinney, who's willing to come on as well, she was on the ship for the Palestinians trying to break the blockade in Gaza. I had some friends in Jerusalem reporting from the Jerusalem Post on my page, so we had both sides. And we're always going to try to have both sides of an issue, but we're not going to be afraid to say which side we think has the stronger side. But sometimes it's not black and white. It's about, more often than not in this world when you're dealing with humans, things tend to be gray. There's multi-sides to things, just like there's a multiverse. There's not just one universe. There's several. There's different dimensions. There's times. There's layers. And we're going to get into that in future shows as well. And we're going to come up with solutions on meditation to get people to try to relax in these very stressful times. We're going to talk about building natural pools in your yard, which will be great, growing food, not lawn. We don't need chemified, golf course lawns. So we're going to have fun, we're going to have information, and we're going to move forward and let people know, what we need to do, to keep going. And the most important thing is I do want you to understand that this is going to be your show too, okay? I want you to be excited. I want you to be a part of this. The Starfire Wolflair, we're going to light up the sky with positive energy every Friday. And I'm telling you, sheep are going to be an endangered species on this Wolflair. So come howl at the moon with us as we explore this multiverse. And if later on, if anybody wants to ask more questions about me, I was the original producer on Veritas Radio. I did write for Out There TV and did some producing. I am a published author and poet of some, I don't want to know if it's note, but it's been published. It's out there if you want to look for it. I don't like to make myself the story. I was the Artificial Intelligence Fellow at the McDonnell Douglas Astronautics Division, though sometimes I felt more artificial than intelligence, and I'm not a fellow. I didn't have a sex change. I did have extensive personal hospice care and experience taking care of my late mom and dad. And like I said, I was a master gardener, which we also got into able gardening for the handicapped. We're going to talk about that too, and the low water, low maintenance, urban, suburban land use plans and methods, which are very, very important in this day and age right now. So we can talk about aerospace. I have a lot of experience with that. I've met several astronauts, cosmonauts, and had several conversations with some xenonauts as well. We can talk about that on future shows. I've done shows with Robin Falco. I'm hoping to have her on. She's the significant other of Richard C. Hoagland. And I think I've told you we're going to hopefully have Joseph Farrell on. I really admire his books, and Jim Mars. There are so many people out there. Peter Lavenda. We're going to talk about the 9. We're going to educate people about that. There are so many things out there that we need to get into. Now, what I'm going to do is tonight give you a sample of what they're all going to be like. Certain shows in the future are just going to be dedicated to one show only, one topic only. But this particular show tonight, I wanted just to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown of, hey, now this is what it's like when we interview somebody that's dealing with politics and whatnot. And our first guest is going to be the interview that I did with John Barbour, he is the man that came up with the Jim Garrison tapes. They are also a background, a little bit of what Oliver Stone used, though he did mostly use Jim Mars' Crossfire book, though for some reason Stone, who's done a great job of trying to get other information out, he tends to not give John any credit. He doesn't even give Jim Mars any credit anymore. He tends to talk about Douglas's book and other people, when I think you really need to go back and realize, but I think it's a little bit that there too many people get afraid of that conspiracy label, and anybody that's been labeled like that, or like in John's case, been blackballed, some of these film guys, even though they're rich, they don't always have the kahunas they should have. But we're going to play another song, and this is another one that came from coming from the nonprofit digital library. These are free legal MPs. This is the Free Music Archive, and that's from the WFMU, the most renowned freedom radio station. I'm going to play a lighthearted one to start with right now, and then I'll be putting on the interview that I had with John Barbour about Jim Garrison and how that came about. So listen now and enjoy something a little lighthearted. Wasn't that just a little bit of fun? We're going to always have some fun here. Now, we're not always just going to have silly stuff, but we're going to have some fun with this stuff. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to kind of laugh a little bit and laugh at ourselves and not take life too serious. And you know what? Rabbits don't get married. So let's just think about what we're doing here. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start off with this interview with John Barbour. It's already into the interview. I've already talked about him earlier. Just another little bit of a setup. Remember, this is the only man in history of television that has 2 Emmys. One in news, one in entertainment. His son is a brilliant man, too. He writes for CSI right now, Chris Barbour. But John, he's incredible. Like I said, he one of the shows we're going to dedicate just to Frank Sinatra. He knew him as Francis. He wrote for him personally. And we even had a time where we talked about what we thought he knew about Kennedy. We'll talk about that sometime. And he knows everybody in Vegas. There's so many great people out there. Shecky Green, all these other people that have been forgotten. And he can talk about Bob Hope. He can talk about Johnny Carson. He can talk about these people because he knew him. You know, he knew him personally. He's from Canada originally. He moved to the United States to go to Hollywood, make a name for himself. He's a patriot. He's a hardworking man. Worked hard his whole life. Good golfer from what I hear. Good friend of George Knapp. I want you to respect him. I want you to know him. He's another one of those names. You know, it's a little bit like Tesla, another name that you don't get to hear. Because these guys get forgotten to try to break the, you know, they push the envelope, whether it's in entertainment or science or energy or whatever. But also, you know, this guy was an activist. He had the guts, he had the kahunas to go get the story from Jim Garrison. When nobody else was doing it. I don't know about you, but I never heard Jim Garrison's name until I saw the JFK movie. And I'm like, is this real? Did this really happen? I mean, we're not taught this. You know, Jim tried, to make a difference, to bring someone to trial for a coup that killed our president. And then John had the kahunas to go get Jim and put a documentary out and try to make a difference and educate the people. And it cost him dearly. I want you to listen for a while, listen to what he has to say. And we'll have follow-up interviews. And John is going to be a regular. I said he's on regular every fourth Friday on the Rents Network. He had his own show there for a while. He and I almost had a show there. We may still do one in the future. He's got so much to share. He needs to talk about everything from current affairs to the past. But I thought this was particularly pertinent this week as we're celebrating or memorializing. No one really celebrates unless you're a Nazi. The murder of JFK. But 50 years, and we still have to bring these people to justice because the people that did the coup are the same generations and their children, their minions, who are now running our country in this two-party crime syndicate. The people involved, the names. Think about it. The day before Kennedy's killed, you got Johnson, you got Nixon, you got Bush, you got Ford later on in the Warren Commission. 4 presidents. What the heck is going on here? You got Nixon, who got his money from Prescott Bush, who was indicted for trying to overthrow FDR when he tried to get the most decorated general, Smedley Butler, most decorated Marine ever, 2-time Medal of Honor winner, wrote the wonderful tome, War is a Racket. It's on my Facebook page. It's both a note and a photo album. You know, they tried to get him to overthrow FDR and bring in a military coup of fascism. Prescott Bush and his bankster buddies were funding both Lenin, both Hitler, later on Mao. They don't care. They just want to make a profit. And they want control, and they want socialism. They don't care which end of the spectrum, left or right, it is. Man should have went to jail. Instead, his son and grandson become presidents. Think about that. George Bush, 41, was in Dealey Plaza the day they killed Kennedy. Nixon was with Hoover's men and Dulles, all at the Hunt people, the night before they murdered. When everybody, I guess, had to wink. I guess we'll never know who the final name was to approve it. Mobsters were involved. The CIA, the very Nazified CIA, using paperclip Nazis. You're going to learn about paperclip. You're going to listen to this show. Nixon worked for Dulles, cleaning up these guys. That's why it was called paperclip. The fake file was paperclip to the real file. Sparky Rubinstein worked for Nixon in California. He later moved to Texas. That's Jack Ruby, the man that was ordered to kill Oswald, because Oswald was supposed to die, not survive to the Dallas police station. Jack Ruby was told it was your screw-up. So you got to do him, or we'll do you. And then he did him anyway with weaponized cancer. We'll get into the weaponized cancer in later shows. We'll get Judith Baker on here and Ed Haslam. Talk about Dr. Sherman and the other folks, Dr. Orslin, and all these guys that were coming up with weaponized cancer using Operation Mongoose. They tied up Robert Kennedy's hands. Here he's working Operation Mongoose on killing Castro, so he can't talk about how it was his own people that were doing this. And some of the Operation Mongoose people were some of the people that killed his own brother. And how Oswald came back from Russia, and who was the Attorney General? Robert F. Kennedy. He had to approve him not being arrested for treason. They really tied his hands up when they killed him. They used the right patsy. And of course, then they killed Kennedy. Both of them. And then they tried to kill Teddy twice in the airplane accident in '64 and then at Chappaquiddick. We'll have a show about that too. And we're also going to have shows about a lot of stuff with Mai Brazel and her son. Mai Brazel is a name that everybody should know. It's a shame that we don't. I'm ashamed I learned about her so late in life. I would have been buying her cassettes if I'd have known she existed, but here in the Midwest, in St. Louis, in the state of Missouri, I'd never heard of her. I mean, a woman put out cassette tapes. She was trying to get the information out there, and newsletters. People were using mimeograph machines. Now we got the internet. We got no excuse. These guys kept it alive, but against unbelievable odds. We can at least do the same. Now, please, listen to John. There's going to be a place in here with some sound glitches. I'll try to catch that as it comes along. But I'd like you to listen to this interview and listen to what happens and listen to how the Jim Garrison tapes came about. And there are going to be some more because he has more that haven't been made into a documentary yet. And I'm determined before John goes and I go, we're going to get that put together. So please, listen up and share.
I'll tell you how I first came across Garrison. You know, Red Fox in his act used to say, heroes aren't born, they're cornered. Well, Jim Garrison was cornered into looking into the Warren Report, and I was sort of cornered into discovering Jim Garrison. I was doing the AM show in Los Angeles. I was the original host of the show, won my first Emmy there. And if we have time, I can tell you stories about Muhammad Ali, who I put on the air when the government wanted to have him incarcerated. Cesar Chavez did me an enormous favor, which I could tell you about. But in any event, it took Jim Garrison 2 years from the time he arrested Clay Shaw to get him into court. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, if the guy has nothing, why is the government maligning him so? And why is the government standing in his way? And why is the media aligning the guy so? Because Jim Garrison, there's a news clip of Jim Garrison looking into the camera saying, "We have solved the crime." It's a wonderful clip, and he said, "We'll prove it in a court of law." But he eventually got into court, and he lost a conspiracy case against Clay Shaw. But little did folks know it wasn't so much the conspiracy case he was after as it was the perjury case. He had witnesses and proof that Clay Shaw knew David Ferry and Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, the jury didn't convict, even though a lot of them wanted to. They didn't convict on the conspiracy, but they did find him guilty of perjury.
Right.
So Garrison felt he had a victory because now he would take him into a courtroom, because this is what the government does when they go after gangsters. They want to get them on conspiracy or perjury, because if they lie, they still have to go into a court of law. But the federal government stepped in and stopped Garrison's trial of Clay Shaw for perjury. Well, I was stunned by this. Anyway, I'd sort of forgotten about it. You know, there was just so much going on, and I had the best show in L.A. We were bumping heads with the Today Show. And when Reagan was running for his second term as governor, he called because mine was a show he wanted to do over the Today Show. So I happened to be in a bookstore one day, and I saw this book, Heritage of Stone. It said Jim Garrison. I thought, is this the same guy? So I picked up the book and started to read it, and it was the same guy. I stood there for an hour reading the book. I bought a couple of copies of the book, went home, and reread it that night. The next morning, I called New Orleans to the district attorney's office, and guess who answers? Jim Garrison, this deep bass baritone voice. And I said, Mr. Garrison, my name's John Barbour. I do a news show live out here in Los Angeles AM. We just won our first Emmy. And I just read Heritage of Stone. And without missing a beat, Carolyn, he said, oh, you must be the other one. I only sold 2 copies. So I said, I can't believe what I'm reading here about the fact that you had to take Time Life magazine to court. The Supreme Court had to rule on you getting your film. And the doctor's ink was...
Okay, that's fine. I can hear you better on this one. And if you have your blog talk on, make sure you have that muted so that it's not playing in the background. That could have some of the interference, too.
Oh, okay. No, I have the volume down on the speakers, so I'm sorry we're having these problems.
Oh, these things happen. I said, when I was on with Judith Baker, when she was hiding out in parts of Europe, we actually had to Skype the entire show and then put it on later on Skype, because every single time we tried to get on, we would have nothing but technical problems. And even when the other Blog Talk hosts had a show, they would be perfectly fine. And then the moment I started to talk about either something to do with the military-industrial complex or something I used to do, or Judith or JFK, almost immediately we would have technical glitches. So I've come to almost live with them and expect them. But right now you sound great.
Well, you're having slight static problems, like I mentioned earlier when we were testing the Skype. But I can hear what you're saying. Okay, I hope it's not going over the air that way, because I know as a member of an audience, when I listen to somebody I want to listen to, and I keep hearing that glitch, that audio glitch, it just irritates me, and pretty soon I give up on it, even though I'm totally interested in it. So I hope your audience can hear us both pretty clearly.
99% of the time you have been excellent. Mine has been a little bit of a little static, but I'll keep my words to the minimum because you're the one with the story anyway, and I'm just here to keep it rolling because what you're saying is amazing, and that's what they want to hear anyway. And you can kind of back everything you were saying about
where do you want? We'll rewind it to where?
Well, when you were talking about finding the Garrison book, I think that's kind of where it started to fade in and fade out. And that.
Oh, okay. I bought the book, so I'm just going to repeat this. And I read it that night. I bought 2 of them. I called the New Orleans DA's office the very next morning, and Jim Garrison himself answered the phone. He has this wonderful, deep bass baritone voice. Just a very empathetic quality that he had. And I said, Mr. Garrison, I host this morning show. It's a news show. It's live. It's very popular. We just won an Emmy, and I just read Heritage of Stone. And he said, oh, you must be the other one. I just sold 2 copies. And I told him I was absolutely astounded at what I found out in his book about the trial. I mean, I was stunned to learn that he had to take a Life magazine to the Supreme Court to have the Supreme Court order Time Life to release the Zapruder film to him for the trial. I was stunned to find out that Dr. Zink could not perform an autopsy because there were too many generals preventing him from doing that, and the number of subpoenas that he had served to people, and they were either torn up or ignored. And I said, so I want you to come on and tell your story. We'll do an interview, then we'll open the phones because everybody would want to talk to you. And he said, John, you'll never get away with it. And I said, yes, we will. It's very successful. It's very popular. Everybody loves the show. So we booked him on the show, and within a week I was fired, and he was canceled from the show. So I didn't see or talk to, well, I didn't see him. But when I ended up being a critic at large at KNBC and at the same time doing the reviews for Los Angeles Magazine, whenever anything would pop up that would be interesting, like Watergate or the Vietnam War, I would call Jim Garrison, and we would talk about it. And he told me about all the names that were familiar to him at Watergate because those were names that popped up during the Kennedy assassination. And he said to me that he was a reluctant comer to the Warren Commission because he always believed them. And he said he was flying back from Washington, seated next to Senator Russell Long, who was one of the few dissenters, or he wrote a dissenting opinion or questionable opinion, which was not published in 26 volumes. And he told Jim, I'm a hunter and I got all kinds of guns, and there's no way that kid Oswald could have used that old man like a Carcano and done that. And Garrison said, you mean? That's all he said, you mean? And Long said, I mean. So what Garrison did, he went back to New Orleans and he bought 3 sets of the Warren Commission report, and one in the office, one of his car, and one at home, and he practically memorized them. And the reason that he did it, because of all the activities of Oswald in New Orleans, and that's how he got involved in it. Anyway, I was always fascinated talking to him, and I don't know why I was interested in that stuff. And I'd be listening to Mai Brussel, and I loved her because she had an interesting delivery, and her facts and information was just terrific. Like, she was a great storyteller. It was like listening to a detective story all the time, but I wasn't consumed by it. I mean, it was just something I did in passing, but I was always interested in it. Anyway, 1979 rolls around, and I finally get Real People on the Air. I had it for a year at ABC under the title National Graffiti, and I wanted Richard Pryor as my co-host, and ABC turned it down, and they said they would never put Richard Pryor on the air. And I said, that guy can put 10,000 people into an auditorium in Detroit, and he's going to be a major star. And he ended up being the biggest movie star in Hollywood for about 2.5 years. Anyway, I ended up getting Real People on the Air, And I did an interview with Daily Variety, said I'm going to change the face of American television with what I call the entertainment of reality. And everybody poo-pooed me except the critic in Chicago by the name of Gary Deeb, who wrote for the Chicago Tribune. Gary Deeb had the best line about American television that I've ever heard. He says, television is the only business in America where competition does not improve the product. So anyway, we became really good friends as a result of that. Well, Real People became the #1 show. And as always happens in this case, the owner of the show, who happened to be George Slaughter was a lot like George Steinbrenner. He owned the Yankees, and he owned the stadium, but he didn't know how to play the game. I was the one who created the show and wrote it, cast Sarah Purcell when Slaughter wanted a movie star, totally responsible for the success of that show. That's all I got to say. Anyway, NBC comes to him and says, we want to do a show, a news show, sort of a reality news show, live. Would you be interested? So the show was called Speak Up America. And it was going to be a poor man's version of, you remember Peter Finch in Network?
Yep.
I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, NBC wanted to try to do something like that on the air. And one of the co-hosts that we hired was Herb Brooks. Herb Brooks was the coach of that sensational American hockey team that won the gold medal at Lake Placid in 1980. And being a hockey junkie, I was thrilled to have Herb come on the show, and we became very, very good friends. Anyway, the show was dying, and Slaughter kept coming to me and saying, I need you to help me save this show. And I said, George, I don't have time. I'm doing this. And besides, I said, I don't want to do any of the stories you're doing. He said, well, find something you want to do. I went back into my office, and I picked up the LA Times to just leaf through it to see if there was a story I'd be interested in. On page 13, guess what I came across?
What?
Page 13, the House Select Committee concludes that 4 shots had been fired at Dealey Plaza because they had found a dicta belt that had been accidentally left open by a motorcycle officer, and therefore a conspiracy had to exist.
Smoking gun.
So I called immediately to New Orleans. Jim gets on the phone, and I said, Jim, I'm reading this in the LA Times on page 13. Do you feel vindicated? And he said, John, I feel like a blind man who's gotten a very small trophy in a very dark room. He said, only I know about it. He said, it's on page 13. I said, hey, maybe we can finally get to tell you the story. He laughed. He says, I don't think so. I said, I'm coming to New Orleans. So I went in to see Slaughter, and I said, listen, I've wanted to tell Garrison's story for years. I mean, for at least a decade. And I've never met him, but I talk to him all the time. So Slaughter said, okay, but you got to do stories in New Orleans. So I went to New Orleans, did a lot of stories about street performers and things like that. And the other host of the show was Marjo Gortner. And Herb didn't want to do the thing with Garrison. He didn't want to be tainted by it. So Marjo Gortner, who was this child preacher grown up, was a co-host of the show, and he was going to do it. So we went to Garrison's house, went into his office, and it's just covered, 4 walls just full of books. I never met anybody who read as much as Garrison. Garrison was, I've known 3 extremely brilliant people in my life, Buckminster Fuller, the scientist, Jim Garrison, and my son. I mean, absolute, totally brilliant people. Now, my son was born in 1969, and he knows stuff that happened 500 years ago. It's like he has this old soul. Anyway, I interviewed Garrison for 3.5 hours. It was the most terrifying, exciting, interesting, frightening 3.5 hours I ever spent in my life. And at one point, I said to him, and you know what? In spite of all the facts that he had and all the information he gave me, all the paperwork he gave me, sometimes people say things, Carolyn, that ring a bell, and it is the bell of truth. And it's not cracked. It is the bell of truth. And just sort of offhandedly, I said to him, Mr. Garrison, I said, you're a former FBI agent. I said, you were in the military. You have a picture on your wall of you sitting outside Dachau with all these bodies behind you, and it says on the bottom, lest we ever forget. I said, and being in the military, you're still in the military. You're a conservative Southerner. Whatever made you think that you could take on the federal government? And it was just a throwaway question. And he smiled and he said, John, I guess as a kid I saw one too many Frank Capra movies. Well, I thought, my God, that's me. Because when I was a kid, I used to watch Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life. There were Frank Capra stories. And I thought, this man is telling the truth. I mean, the facts are all here, but the guy is really telling the truth. Anyway, I turn around, put the camera on Marjo Gortner, and I give him 12 questions to ask, and that's all. Mr. Garrison doesn't even have to be in the room. But during the course of the interview, I said to him, how many shooters do you think there were? He said quickly, 3. And there were 3 teams of 2, and it was triangulation. He said the grassy knoll, the Daltex building. And then I said to him, well, Mr. Garrison, how many people do you think knew what was going to happen? And he said, well, John, this is all on a need-to-know basis, so I'd say 32. At the most, he said, probably about 32. So anyway, I put the camera on Marjo, and we shoot the questions. I get back to town, and the stuff is so good that we're going to do it in a 2-parter. So in the first part, when Jim Garrison's face comes up on screen, now he has this big round face. He's leaning forward into the camera so that he can further make the point. It gives you more of the impression this man is telling the truth, and he has a slightly cocked eye, so you can't take your eye off him. And he has this great voice, and he said, Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing to do with shooting John Kennedy. As a matter of fact, he never fired a shot at all. I mean, that's the first soundbite. So it's extremely compelling, and they go into the fact about the paraffin test. The paraffin test is negative, and yet a note comes from the FBI that the paraffin test is positive, and the media reports on the paraffin test from the FBI and not the paraffin test from the lab. So it's really, people can't wait till the next episode. I'm at home the following week, and up comes part 2. And they get to the point where Marjo Gortner says, how many shooters do you think there were? And there's a cut to Jim Garrison. And his answer is 32. And I screamed at the set. I thought, what the hell is this? And immediately the phone rings, and it's George Slaughter. And he says, what do you think? I said, what have you done? What have you done? I start screaming at him. He said, Garrison, is it not? I said, you're a nut. You're a nut. I hope he sues you. My God, what have you done? And I slammed the phone down on him, and I called Jim immediately, and I'm crying. And he says, John, I didn't expect any more. It happens to me all the time. All the time. I said, but Mr. Garrison, I had edited the story. There's no way that this could have happened. He says, they find a way to make it happen. I said, listen, please sue NBC. Please sue George Slaughter. because to prove liable, you have to prove malicious intent, and this is malicious intent. He says, John, my family loves your show. We love you. Thank you so much. Just send me a Real People T-shirt. So anyway, I call. One of my very good friends was a guy named Hal Cantor, who for 15 to 20 years wrote all the jokes for the Academy Awards. Very funny, witty man, great family man, had a great daughter. The daughter now is an extremely successful documentary filmmaker. Anyway, I call her up, and I said, what happened? And she said, Slaughter called me at midnight and told me to come in, and we re-edited it. I said, listen, I got you the job for your father. I'm the one that took you to New Orleans. Why didn't you call me? I started screaming at her. And she started to cry. She said, he told me not to call you. He told me not to call you. So anyway, my days at Real People were numbered after that. And that was probably that was the saddest moment that I ever had in show business. You know, when I was a kid, I used to be surprised, Carolyn, when people were evil. Now I'm surprised when they are good. So what happened is I left Real People, and I got to fill in 1 week for a lady at CNN, and I did really well, and CNN wanted to hire me, and then all of a sudden there were forces behind the scene that stopped that show from coming on. I got a late night 2 weeks at ABC called the Barbour Report, and in 2 weeks my ratings were as good as David Letterman's on CBS, and that was scuttled. So I had a difficult time after that, but it didn't really bother me that much. You know, I had made a lot of money, and I had saved it up. I'd sent my son to Stanford, and so I'd gone a lot farther than I ever thought I'd ever go. But in any event, I saved all these interview tapes, and because it was on videotape, I would transfer it every couple of years to keep it fresh. And now 1990 comes along, and I read that Oliver Stone is going to make the Jim Garrison story based on the Trail of the Assassins, which he had bought for $50,000, and Garrison was supposed to get a piece of the profit. So I called Oliver Stone's office, and I said, hey, that's great. I've got all these tapes of the real Jim Garrison. I mean, it's not Kevin Costner, it's Jim Garrison. And I said to his private secretary, I'd like to speak to Oliver. So she went away and came back and said, well, he's busy right now. He said, send over the tapes. I said, no, you send over Oliver. I'm not sending the tapes to him. So I never heard back from him. And I thought, you know, he could have been the executive producer of this documentary, which would come out after JFK, which supports everything that he says about the assassination, except there was a lot of fictitious stuff in JFK, because Prouty, who's depicted in the film talking on a bench to Kevin Costner in Washington, never did meet with Jim Garrison. There were all kinds of anomalies like that. So anyway, I get a call from Garrison's office, because I figure the only way that I'm going to do this documentary is to put up my own money. And there was a wealthy kid named Lamar Card, who I met by accident, who heard about this and wanted to help. So it was cost around $200,000. I got a really interesting story about my cameraman on this too. Anyway, I get a call from Garrison's daughter, and she says, we just got a call from somebody named Rose in Oliver Stone's office. Do you know a Rose? I said, I don't know a Rose, and I can't remember the name of the lady I talked to. And she said, well, the message was that Oliver would not appreciate Jim being involved in cooperating with me in making this documentary, because he's investing a lot of money in this film. So I said to the daughter, I said, what did your father say? she said, my father said, screw Oliver. John's been trying to tell the story for nearly 20 years. Let him tell the story. So then I went out and put all the material together for the Garrison tapes. And in spite of the fact that it won the San Sebastian Film Festival Award, it was on Cinemax for a week, where it did absolutely great. I had been totally unable to get this documentary on any of these History channels or the Military Channel or the Biography Channel or Arts and Entertainment. And it's gotten rave reviews all around the world. So I'm staggered by this because you know that come this November 22nd, the 50th anniversary, there's going to be tons of crap all over the place about this. And the only law enforcement officer who ever looked into this case was Jim Garrison. Now, here's an interesting story about one of my cameramen. One of my cameramen was the son of a military officer, but he never knew what his father did. His father was an absentee father. So the father didn't even know what his son was working on, and his son's in his 30s. Anyway, the son's getting all kinds of pats on the back from people who got to see the documentary. It ran for a week at the Laemmle Theater in Los Angeles, which is an art house. And I appeared there every day to do questions and answers. It was wall-to-wall sold out for every performance. The same thing in San Francisco. Sold out wall-to-wall every performance. But we had to carry this by hand to these art house theaters to get it seen. And the LA Times came in by accident and gave it a rave review, which absolutely stunned me. I thought it would help sell it, but nothing would help sell it in this country. Anyway, the cameraman comes to me. He said, I got a call from my dad. And I said, so? He said, my dad loved the film, and I haven't heard from him in months. And he wants to have breakfast with you. He has a lot of stories to tell you about why your documentary is right on the money. And I thought, well, what does he do? He says, I don't know. I haven't the foggiest idea. But he doesn't want me there. He just wants you there. So anyway, I meet at this coffee shop in Toluca Lake. It's called Patty's. It's one of the most, famous celebrity coffee shops in Toluca Lake. I meet him, sit down in a booth. He shakes my hand. He said, you made a wonderful film. He said, I called my son and I told him I had some things to tell you. And I said, well, thank you. I can't wait. He says, well, I can't tell you. And I said, oh? He said, I was second in charge of military intelligence in Vietnam. And I'm going to tell you these couple of things, but I'll deny I've told you. And he said, I happened to be in Miami as the Bay of Pigs were going on, and just before the Bay of Pigs. And you know what we had? We had this huge room with all these maps of Havana, with all the buildings that were important in Havana. And you know what we were doing? We were assigning office space before we ever took over Cuba. My office was going to be here, and another office was going to be here. Navy intelligence was going to be over here. CIA was going to be over here. And he said when Kennedy didn't offer the air supports, which we had cornered him into doing, we wanted him dead right then and there. He said, the only other thing that I'll say to you, and you can look this up, and I guess you could look it up too. He said, Soldier Field in Chicago is built as a memorial to the soldiers who died, I guess in World War I. And he says they have this large officers' quarters up there. And you can go there. It's like a rest area, a pseudo-dining hall, a snack hall, and get a cup of coffee or a little drink there. You can go there any day of the week. He said, you won't find 8 or 9 people there. He said on November 22nd, it was packed. And he said, I won't tell you any more about that. He didn't even finish his coffee or breakfast, got up and left. But when he left, he said, I have a pension I need to collect, and walked out the door. Well, his son called me and said, what did my dad say? So I told him everything his dad said. His son couldn't believe it. He had no idea what his father did. He said, well, God, that answers a question for me that I just don't understand how I ever got this job. And I said, what job? He said, well, you know, the CIA has their Academy Awards. You know, they have their Emmys.
Wow.
They have their Golden Mics. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, what they do is they have this large award ceremony and give these medals to these people, and everybody applauds them and pats them on the back and toasts them with the drink. Then they gather up the medals and they put them away, and nobody sees the videotape. It stays in the archives of the CIA. And I said, you're kidding. He said, yeah. I said, how do you know? He said, I shot one. I said, what do you mean you shot one? He said, I don't know where it came from, but I got a call from somebody who said they were having this award ceremony in Langley, Virginia. And would I come and shoot it? And he said, I thought it was a joke. So I said, sure. He said, but I'm going to need a crew of 2 or 3 people. I'll probably need 2 or 3 cameramen. No, I need a crew of a half a dozen. And I can't fly them coach, and my equipment's I gotta go back there first class. And the guy said, how much do you think it'll cost? So my cameraman said, I tried to scare him off. I said $50,000, which was a ton of money at the time. And the guy said, what's your account number? I said, I'm not giving you my account number. And the guy says, give me your account number. I don't need your password. So he gave him the account number, and he thought, well, that's the end of it. He said within an hour, $50,000 had been deposited in his bank. And he went back and he shot it. And he said it had to be my father who got me that gig.
Amazing. They got the money. They got the money to use it and throw it around when they want to, John. You know that.
Well, they have all the money. They have all the money in the world. The thing is that it is beyond me, you know, that the CIA, which Harry Truman says that he was sorry he ever started in 1947 with the national security state. The CIA is supposed to go around disrupting everything and killing people who might be socialists and infiltrating the media to put down people like Mark Lane and My Brussels and anybody who has any real information about how America is run. And it's amazing to me that the CIA is the only branch of the federal government that seems to know what it's doing. Because they're very successful at it.
Do you think that My Brussels was given that weaponized cancer? I think they accelerated her death, don't you?
Well, I'm sure it's possible that they have done. You know, I always question why Bill Hicks died when he was 32 of cancer. Bill Hicks was the precursor to George Carlin, and of course Lenny Brucer was the precursor of Bill Hicks and George Carlin. And I know that Lenny Bruce had to be set up by the LA police, and they gave him dope that was bad dope and killed him, and then staged that photo of him with his needle in his arm naked in the bathroom and spread it all over the place. They did that to discredit Lenny and his work. Well, Bill Hicks was every bit as good as Lenny Bruce was. He never had the chance to have a bigger career, but he was absolutely brilliant. He did some wonderful stuff. He happened to be my son's favorite comedian. My son was just 12 years old, I guess, when he first heard Bill Hicks, but he loved him because he was so bright and funny, and he got cancer at 32. I mean, they gave it to Jack Ruby, you know, and who knows how they could have given it to My Brussels. But, you know, the church committee back, I guess it was in 77. In 1977, they had a list of nearly 1,000 people in the media, that's in radio and television and newspapers and in magazines, who are CIA conduits. I mean, that's 1,000 in 1977. Imagine what they have now. I mean, they must just be all over the place. You have no idea with whom you're dealing. I remember Jesse Ventura making the comment that when he became governor, one of the first things he had to do was go down to a basement and sit with a dozen people who were CIA agents to be interviewed. And I've never heard him expand on that, but I would certainly like to talk to him about that, because I would have collected cards and asked for names, and then I would have revealed who they were after the fact. But I've never heard him talk about it since, or name any of the names of the people who interviewed him.
Well, it's sad to say, but the CIA is everywhere. I know when I worked at McDonnell Douglas, they came and would be interviewed. I would be, go into a room, be asked questions, and they actually asked the only intelligent questions. The only time I ever got interviewed by the FBI, they were idiots. But, I'm actually, with May, I'm not surprised if, they had proven that the CIA had bought the house across from her. So, there was so many different ways they could have got in her water line, her air conditioner. There's so many different cancer-causing agents, and it's very simple now that weaponized cancer virus is just so easy. Because even look at Molly Ivins. She was writing that book on Bush and then, basically gets cancer and dies. I think that's what shows so much courage about you, too, that you didn't back down. I'm surprised it didn't come to you and threaten you, John.
Well, there's nothing I'm small potatoes. I can't influence anything. Freedom of speech is allowed in this country as long as you don't have an audience. Well, I don't have that large an audience. The documentary has already been made, and one of my good friends on the internet is Joan Millen, who wrote really the best book about Jim Garrison. Is out now. I think it's Justice Denied or Justice Delayed, and she teaches English and the Kennedy assassination at Temple University, and she can't even get enough money together to get me back there to screen the documentary for her students. She'd just written a book about George de Morgenshield and the CIA in Haiti, and I said, well, I don't understand. This documentary is a really good piece of work. It's a great story, and it's about a man. It's about a person. It's not just about a murder. It's not just a murder mystery. It's about this man, and you get wrapped up in him. He has a family. And she said, you have no idea where the CIA is and the influence and the power they exert over this country. So anyway, that's probably one of the reasons they did away with him, because he wanted to do away with the CIA. He said he was going to splinter it into 1,000 pieces and blow it to the wind.
He'd already fired Alan Dulles.
Yeah, he fired Dulles, and he fired the guy who was his second in command, Cabell, who was the mayor of Dallas at the time of the assassination. Do you know, if they had cell phones and computers on November 22nd, that crime would have been solved within hours. Absolutely within hours, that crime would have been solved. And the way the media works, like, for example, the New York Times, there used to be a terrific critic on the New York Times by the name of John Leonard. He was just an ordinary critic. He happened to be one of the people who bought Jim Garrison's Heritage of Stone, and he wrote an absolutely glowing review of Garrison's book. Within a week, he was made the editor of their Weekend Arts edition, and when they reprinted the review, they cut out everything positive that he had said about Jim Garrison. Everything.
Yeah. He got butchered. I think that's why they didn't kill Jim Garrison. I think it's because they had felt that they had successfully, muddied his name in New Orleans, trying to, put mud on him and hinted he had done some crimes. And then, like you said, they tried to make a fool out of him. And they would cut and paste even something you worked on, just to succeed in trying to, destroy his reputation. You need to tell people.
Yeah, I could never understand why Slaughter would have done something so venal and so heinous. I mean, it's beyond me, but I remember a conversation I had with him when we first started the show. He came up to me one day and he said, I think you and your family are the only people I love. Now, here's a guy who had 2 daughters and a wife. His wife, Jolene, was somebody that everybody hated. She was what they call a total Hollywood bitch. Now, I found her very pleasant to me, but I heard horror stories about her. And his oldest daughter worked on the show when she was 16 years of age, and she was very charming. The youngest daughter had some mental problems. But he said to me, I don't love many people, but I love you and Sarita and Christopher, because I was never interested. He would invite me to parties and I would never go, invite me to functions, I would never go. I was so happy doing my work, and I would just go home because I'll tell you, the most joy I ever had in my life was being with my son. And, I never even wanted a child.
Really?
Because I didn't know what kind of father I was going to be.
Oh, John.
But I'll tell you, if there's such a thing as reincarnation, I want to come back as my son, because he had the best parents I ever saw in my life. So I could not understand. He did say to me, do you and Sarita ever have any problems? And I said, what do you mean problems? You mean domestic problem? I said, no, not at all, no. He said, do you have problems with anybody? I said, what kind of problem? He said, well, you're a pretty tough critic. Anybody harass you? And I said, well, somebody shot at my Studebaker once when I bombed the Jerry Lewis telethon, a bullet hole in my Studebaker. But I don't know who did it, so I don't know if I have any enemies that I can see or not. He said, if you ever have a problem, you come to me because I have friends. And I thought, what the hell is he talking about? The guy's German, for Christ's sake. He's not Italian. What kind of friends could he have? Well, I don't know what kind of friends he had, because when Bush was inaugurated as President of the United States, it was George Slaughter who put together his show. So maybe he had friends in government that I didn't even know about. And maybe it was something like that, in order to get in good with them, that impelled him to do this, heinous thing by trying to discredit Jim Garrison.
Wow. John, before we had about 20 minutes left of the live show. I wanted to make sure you tell people again, because I've told them in the beginning, John Barbour's World is your website, and it's an amazing place. It's not only got more about what we've been talking about tonight, but it also has the marvelous documentary on Ernie Kovacs, someone I've said that people need to learn who he is, and also, that has wonderful segments of You with Frank Sinatra, the thing with Bob Hope, a bunch of things. But also, do you want to tell them how to see the Garrison tapes? Now, I have a Facebook page that you and I, we had that up a year ago, and there are people going there, and they will be sent to your website from that Facebook page, which is available on, and people can find it. I'll have more links on my Facebook page. And we did have it for a very short time up at YouTube, which was a bit of a mistake, but over 5,000 people saw it. So we know that there's interest, and, I can say it for you. It is an incredible documentary. It should be, and everybody that cares about the coup d'etat, that wants to know all the facts, it is one of those key documentaries that has to be included if you think you have a JFK library. It's amazing. And you didn't do this to make money. You're not profiting from this. So why don't you take a minute and tell people how they can get that? Because we've got.
Oh well, that's very sweet of you, dear. All they have to do is go to John Barbour's World. It's all one word. There are no spaces. It's all small. There are no caps. And Barbour's is Barbours. There's no apostrophe. and the site will come up, and the first thing you'll see is the Garrison tapes, and it says videos, and then you can click it on. But aside from the Garrison tapes, you can also click on the Ernie Kovacs special, and again, that special was up for Peabody consideration, and I can't even get that sold to the Comedy Channel. And Ernie Kovacs was a Charlie Chaplin of television, for crying out loud, and his is a great, wonderful story. You know, his children were kidnapped by his ex-wife after a divorce, and for 2 years he was trying to make America laugh while paying private detectives to try to find his children. So in the first part of the documentary, you're just fascinated by this interesting, entertaining character and what he can do on camera. But all of a sudden you get caught up in the guy's life, and now it's not so much his work you're looking at, but the guy's life. He was the first man, I think, in America to gain custody of his children in a divorce battle. And it inspired ABC to make an awful movie about Ernie Kovacs, but that's up there also. There's a lot of really, really good stuff up there. And I wish, you know, the documentary put me out $200,000, and George Knapp keeps urging me to do a part two, because he asked me one time. We did a screening over at the Library Theater here a few months ago that sold out. I mean, it was free, so the place was packed, and George was there. And he asked me what I would do if I were going to do a part two, because I always wanted to do a part two, because I have so much terrific information still on tape. And I would do JFK and the media, the second assassination of John Kennedy. Because that had not been for the media, the assassination would have been solved. And even if they had gotten in the way of it, if they had stayed up Jim Garrison's way, he would have solved it in a court of law, which indeed he did. Unfortunately, the forces railed against him were much too strong. Again, if it weren't for the media, we'd know a lot more about 911, for crying out loud. I mean, here you got George Bush trying to shut down an investigation into this horrifying event, closes down the crime scene, for crying out loud, and then nominates a war criminal, Henry Kissinger, to head it up. I mean, how more obvious does it get that something is dreadfully wrong with this country? I mean, whether you believe in a conspiracy or that it was an inside job or whatever, we don't know that. All we know is that it was never investigated properly. That's all we know about the John Kennedy killing. It was never investigated. And as far as Robert Kennedy is concerned, I was a really, really close friend for a number of years with Thomas Noguchi, who performed the autopsy on Robert Kennedy. And anybody can get this autopsy report by just Googling the archives, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. He concluded in the autopsy that the shot that killed Robert Kennedy, the muzzle of the gun could have been more than 2 to 3 inches from the back of his ear because of the extensive powder burns to the skull and hair. And, you know, they tried for years in Los Angeles to get rid of Thomas Noguchi because he would not change his autopsy report. And he said publicly, he said, listen, I'm not saying this Sirhan didn't kill him. This is the autopsy report. Somebody else has to do the investigating. Well, Sirhan was in front of him and couldn't get closer than 6 feet, even with his arm extended. So that was never thoroughly investigated, except some guy in England found some video of the Ambassador Hotel that shows you 3 known CIA officers in the crowd. But the police in Los Angeles were totally infiltrated by the Central Intelligence Agency. And my Brussels, bless her heart, and she was never brought to court for it, she says the guy that did it was the security guard, Chain, who was retired in the Philippines at the time, and she could have been taken to court for libel. But this guy, Chavez or whatever his name was, never filed a suit against her. So that was a pretty gutsy lady to do that. So all of these things are going uninvestigated, all of them. And one of the things that is so horrifying is my daughter-in-law is getting her master's in sociology and psychology because she wants to treat people she knows in the entertainment business who are addicted to prescription drugs. And she can make a great living just in that town treating those people. Well, you can see the internet filled with very bright reporting from people who dig into the facts of the kid at Aurora who shot those people in the theater, and Columbine. All of these people are on psychotropic drugs. And right now we can't even get a toxicology report on this Lanza kid at Sandy Hook. I mean, something is wrong. And I saw a picture the other day on the internet. I don't know how true it is. It showed you the cops breaking into this guy's house. Evidently, this guy's wife had died of colon cancer, and the cops were breaking in to retrieve the medications. Now, I never got to read the story, so I don't know how true that was. But that is absolutely horrifying to me, that this information is being suppressed.
Oh, yeah, constantly. You know, I'd like to ask you, did you know Dorothy Kilgallen? Talk about...
Did I know Dorothy Kilgallen? No, but I think there's a case. I don't know how she got in to see Jack Ruby, but she said she was going to break the case wide open. Now, if she's saying I'm going to break the case wide open, she is not going to prove that Oswald was already the shooter. She would have no reason to say that because the government already said Oswald is the shooter. So there is no question that they murdered her. And I don't know how they did it. They did it, but they murdered her. But look at Sam Giancana. Sam Giancana was murdered. John Rosselli was murdered. These were major players in the assassination who were about to testify before the House Select Committee. The same with George de Morgenscheld, supposedly blew his head off and committed suicide before he was to be interviewed by somebody from the House Select Committee. Then you have this guy, G. Robert Blakey, who heads up the House Select Committee. The first guy to be there is a guy named Richard Sprague, who was a prosecutor from Philadelphia who had put a lot of mafia hoods in jail for corruption. He was indestructible and uncorruptible, and he's made head of the House Select Committee. He gets a call from Langley, from one of the people at the CIA, asking him about what his intentions are, and he should come over and be interviewed to Langley. And Sprague said to them, no, hold it. You're coming over here to be interviewed, and not just interviewed, under subpoena, and you better bring a truckload of documents because you're all going to be subpoenaed. That's what he told the CIA. Within months, there was a move afoot to get him out of there, and they replaced him with this hack, Robert Blakey, this law professor from Columbia, who writes a book about how the mafia supposedly killed John Kennedy. Now, two things. First of all, he dedicates the book at the front to the CIA. You can buy his book and open it, and there's the dedication. The other thing is, you and I know, if the mafia had anything to do with the killing of John Kennedy, there would not be a pizza parlor in America. There would not be a one. Now, they may have been underlings in it, but the mafia did not have the power to control the press or the government. That can only come from Lyndon Johnson and on down.
Well, you had Nixon, you had Johnson, you had Bush 41, all in Dallas and Houston the days before, all making their little pact for a coup d'etat, and they got what they wanted. I mean, the very treasonous Nazi Bush family, going back to Prescott Bush, who wanted to overthrow FDR. He couldn't get FDR overthrown.
Well, one of the books, I asked Garrison about whether or not Johnson was involved, and he said, if not, he said Johnson heard the gunshots. I mean, he had a very poetic way of talking. He said Johnson heard the gunshots and within 48 hours completely reversed John Kennedy's position in Vietnam and authorized the sending of 50,000 troops. And when he was talking about the CIA, he said, listen, John, he says the CIA and the military have no qualms about dropping napalm and bombs on women and children who are yellow, who are running around in black pajamas. They have no qualms about doing that. Do you think they have any qualms about blowing the head off of a 5'9", blue-eyed, red-haired Irishman? And of course he was talking about John Kennedy. They wouldn't have no qualms about doing that at all. But there was a book written about, 12, 14 years ago by Lyndon Johnson's attorney. The attorney's name was McClellan, and his son was George Bush's press secretary. And the book is called Blood, Money, and Power. And in it, he identifies the one missing fingerprint. When Garrison, in the documentary that you'll see on John Barbour's World, he said there were a bunch of fingerprints on the box. He said not one was Oswald. All the fingerprints were of cops except one. And it's interesting that he says except one, because in McClellan's book, he identifies the fingerprint of the guy who was Johnson's hired killer. The guy that this lawyer, McClellan, Johnson's sister was embarrassing him as an alcoholic nymphomaniac, and Johnson had this guy kill her and then got him out of prison. Johnson posthumously was convicted of homicide by a grand jury in Texas. Posthumously, and one of the convictions, I mean, aside from a couple of people from the Department of Agriculture who were investigating some of his shenanigans with Bobby Baker, aside from being posthumously convicted or charged there, one of the convictions is about the assassination of John Kennedy. Now, McClellan only got to speak at the press club in Washington, and guess how many people showed up? 4 people. Here is a guy who was the father of George Bush's press secretary, Lyndon Johnson's lawyer, identifying the killer who was hired by Johnson, who was involved in this assassination. He claims it was Johnson who was trying to engineer it because he knew that Bobby Baker was going to be arrested, and that soon Johnson not only would be kicked off the ticket, but he would end up in prison. So he felt he had no choice. Now, I'm not sure that I believe that. But this guy wrote this book, and you would think that more people would want to talk to him about it, the facts that he reveals. He's never heard of again. And the book is called Blood, Money, and Power. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think I saw that on Book TV. You know, one of our favorite joint places is C-SPAN's Book TV. I think I saw a good portion of his little interview on there. And it's just amazing. I'm not sure I buy his whole theory either, but I think it has some good key pieces of the puzzle.
Well, anyway, there was so much more that I wanted to chat with you about a show of a show business nature, and I'm trying. I said that I was going to mention something about Red Fox, so maybe if you want, I'll tell you one closing story, because earlier in the show I told you that Red Fox got the very biggest laugh that I'd ever heard from an audience. So if you want me to close by telling you that story.
Excellent. Sounds great.
Okay, well, anyway, the largest laugh in radio went to Jack Benny. Jack Benny was, as you know, notorious skinflint. And anyway, Sheldon Leonard played this heavy. Sheldon Leonard comes up to him on the street. Now, this is on radio. And he says, "Your money or your life?" He's got a gun. And there's a long, long pause. And Sheldon Leonard repeats, "Your money or your life?" And Benny says, I'm thinking. Well, it got a huge, huge laugh. And that was supposedly the largest laugh ever in radio. The largest laugh I ever heard in television was Red Fox. I put Red on a show. I, at one time, had been signed as Merv Griffin's replacement. And I used to do Merv's show, and one night when I did his show, because folks were used to people who hosted these kind of shows coming out and doing a monologue. So there were two other guys under contract who didn't do well, but I came out and I did my monologue like Carson and Jack Parr and all the rest of those guys. It went pretty well. Well, the show got really high ratings. And I was put under contract for $600 a week for 6 months to be his replacement. However, the guy that I had as a manager also managed Bob Newhart, and I didn't know that Westinghouse was also negotiating with Bob Newhart to take over the show. Because I went to my manager and said, hey, look, I want to take out a full-page ad saying that I'm under contract to Westinghouse. And he talked me out of it. He said, no, you just had a child, and you should save the money to help your child. Anyway, they ended up with David Frost, which was a disaster. But Channel 11 in L.A., which bought the show, thought that it was going to die, and they wanted me around, so they gave me a Saturday night show. It was 90 minutes, and I could do what I want on the show. So on this one show, I had Jack Carter, a comedian. I had Rip Taylor, the guy they call a crying comedian. And then I had Cheryl, the Coochie Coochie girl. And it's just a local show. And I gave Red Fox his first break at a variety show because I knew all of Red's material. And next to Jackie Mason, he was by far the wittiest ad-libber I ever heard. So I knew there would never be a problem. Anyway, Red comes out, and he sits down, and knowing his material, I asked him, because it was the height of the Black Power movement, I said, how do you feel about the Black Power movement? And Red says, I don't care about the Black Power or the White Power. I just cares about green power, because if you have the green, you can buy the places where the blacks and the whites has their meetings. So the audience chuckled a little bit. And then as an ad lib, because it just occurred to me there, I said to Red, why do you think money's colored green? And without missing a beat, he says, John, that's because Jews pick it before it gets ripe. Well, I must tell you, Carolyn, the audience went literally berserk because they'd never heard anybody ever say anything like that. And we could barely continue with the show, and every time we would try to continue with the show, Jack Carter would jump up, he'd open up his wallet and start throwing money before it got right, and the audience would go nuts again. So they laughed for literally 10 minutes and just never stopped. And I had that on tape somewhere. I've never had it transferred to film. I should have it transferred.
Oh, God, I'll help you do it. We got about a minute left of the live show, John. That was amazing. My father used to watch Red Fox and Sanford & Son, and I encourage anybody to, I know YouTube has several of the episodes. It is amazing. And I want to remind everybody again, John Barbour's World, you have to go there. It's not just about the Garrison tapes. It is basically a history of Hollywood and news. It's both entertainment and news. And you also have to catch him when he's on with Jeff Friends. Jeff does a great job, and I know there's some of your old shows too that you did on the Runts Network too that are available on there. And you got to come back on again so we can. I want to talk about your next. I want to talk about documentary number 2 as well. I think that you have to do that. And also, you were writing a book, so when you come back, we got to talk about that.
Well, I am trying so hard. I see people like Jim Mars putting out a half a dozen books, a lot of my friends writing books. I'm having the toughest time getting through it. But I guess, and I must tell you honestly, it's got a lot of terrific stuff in it. And I don't know why I'm not more motivated to do it. It's a very lonely, solitary profession. And I keep thinking about Dorothy Parker. Dorothy Parker once said, "I hate writing, but I love having written." Well, I feel the same way. I just hate sitting down. I get my kicks at night for about an hour. I go over my Facebook page and I try to make comments on what some people have said on the internet, and then I can go to bed having done my creative best for the day. Anyway, the next time I come on, remind me to tell you the story of how and why Bob Hope came on my local show when he wouldn't do anybody's show. And it's the first and only time Bob Hope ever did a serious interview. Anyway, Carolyn, I'm so glad you have the show, and I'm going to be listening to you often and give my best to your partner, and we'll talk again shortly, I hope.
Yeah, and we'll clean this up. We're going to clean up the tape. We have a clean audio we got off here on the iMac while we were interviewing. So even if there was some problems with the blog talk transmission, we have a clean version, which we'll put up on Facebook tomorrow and also on YouTube, because what you said tonight, was so important, because you were discussing history, not only of Hollywood, which is interesting and important, but also what you said about Jim Garrison and the struggles you went through. People need to understand that. They need to respect you for that, but also understand what it takes to get truth out there. And you're one of the heroes.
Well, thank you so much, dear, and you have a terrific weekend.
Okay, you too. Thanks, John. You're amazing.
Thanks. Good night, dear.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, for those that have listened through the whole show, that is up on YouTube. It was something that I did pre-record. John is going to come back on in the next couple weeks, and he's going to be a regular on here. He is an incredible man. He did several shows, during the 50th anniversary week. I don't know why we call it anniversary. It should be Memorial Week, I guess. But I'll tell you, he still has more secrets to share. I mean, Hollywood secrets, which are fun, and we're going to use some of that during the entertainment shows. But he's also, he is just so insightful that he's going to be giving, play-by-play when it comes to the current events, too. I mean, he's sharp, he's witty. I mean, that's why Frank Sinatra would not hire a man to write for him that was a fool. And you don't write for the Dean Martin roast in the old days because you didn't know what you were doing. And frankly, more of you would know his name if he hadn't taken the risk of making that documentary about the JFK coup. And, I mean, the man lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential income because he put it on the line. Let's let people know the name John Barbour, just like we should know Pat Tillman, who gave up millions and then took a bullet through the forehead because he was going to spill the beans on UK and US Army and Marines guarding opium so that the heroin can be profitable for black projects for MI6 and CIA. I'm sitting outside my house. My house has now been torched. I've been on the run in exile for 5 years. My Brazel got cancer. Molly Ivins got early cancer. A lot of people get whacked. Look at Wellstone. My God, there were 2 pilot instructors on board. John Jr. was killed, not just JFK and RFK and MLK. They tried to shoot Wallace. I mean, these people are above, they have impunity. They've gotten away with it because too many people don't want to hear the truth because their own little lives are comfortable. Oh, don't bother me. I don't want to risk my pension. I don't want to risk my benefits. I mean, I couldn't believe somebody actually came to one of the hotels I was in going, yeah, that's good. I know what's happening to you is wrong. And yeah, I even saw him threatening your life. Yeah, I even heard the death threats and all this. Oh, but shit, this stuff, Oswald acted alone. Don't get involved with that stuff, But then this guy was making money at the MIC off the Iraq and Iranian, threatening Iran and all this stuff because he still is at McDonnell Douglas. So he owed me his job, but, he was only going to help me if I was willing to get horizontal, and I wasn't going to go down that road. I do want to mention some folks, people, that I really would like you to think about and care about, because Type 1 Radio is something I did every Friday. It comes out of Bristol, England. It's on Blog Talk, and you can hear on John's interview with me. That was what we actually did originally to put on Type 1 Radio. The folks over there do a lounge every Saturday night from 6 till 9 o'clock Central Time. Anybody can Skype in. You can all talk. And they get into everything. We've had Judy Woodworth on there about the dustification of the buildings. There's been discussions of everything from meditation to personal sovereignty, plus just some shows that are just fun, and you sit around the lounge and you talk. We're going to do that stuff here too, and Sonic Etchison from there, and Steve Gaddafi and Debbie, his wife, we're going to have them on. Rita's going to come on. There's a lot of people that worked hard. I had a helper, Brett Roshan. I hope he still comes back and gets involved. He's got some personal issues he's working with now. I hope he doesn't give up totally, because he's got a lot of potential. He just needs to focus. I also want to mention, folks, if you're on the West Coast at all, there's a wonderful guy, Mitch Lamore, great guy. They just put on some 5 and 10K races over there for the Thanksgiving holiday. You need some Christmas stuff. He's got kettle corn machines. We're going to talk about that sometime. And he does bicycles. He actually builds his own. He actually does the welding and everything. It's www.lamorebikes. Lamore is LAMOURE bikes.com, and kettlecornmasters.com. I don't know about you, but we can all use that kind of stuff around the holidays. And he's actually, I think, going to help us. I have a dear friend, Carol Sloan, that is just a wonderful dear person. That she has she's one of these people that cares about 2-legged and 4-legged creatures. She's taking care of her little kitty cat now, Carol Duane Sloan. She's got a wonderful dachshund, Patrick, that she's trying to help. We're going to probably have to make a little, what do you call those basket leg things with the wheels for the poor thing, because its back legs aren't working. And Mitch with his bicycle thing, we may actually put him to work with that. But other people too, if anybody knows anyone that can help make one of those little things for our puppy dog. This is a great dog, and she's a great woman. She's helped me out. She's helped other people out, and she never wants anything in exchange. Another person's going to come on in the future is Peter Kavnistos. Kavnistos is in Greece. He's an expatriate. He does a lot of stuff. He's gotten into a lot of great stuff as far as his own website, as far as the unusual UFOs news and whatnot, and he can tell us what's going on in Greece. And Leslie Mitz, who worked a lot with Jerry Pippin, her and her significant other have put together a great book about some of these things that possibly are missing people, that there's almost like a wolf Sasquatch type thing. We're going to talk about that. And then Regis Doucette has really gotten more awake and aware the last couple of years. Boy, he has just been working his fanny off, and he's actually looked into a lot of the chemtrails and the acid rain, and so he's actually working now with a company that they've actually got a product that's eco-friendly, that doesn't cause any of the dangerous things that all the petrochemicals can do. The Navy even uses it now to wash away the soluble salts and ions. You can read more about it. One of his distributors at mydurablesolutions.com. This is something we're going to talk about later, because that's one of the solution things. And Regis is actually, we're going to do a little segment with him on that, so we can show people there is a way to solve some of these problems. I'm kind of jumping in to make sure we cover a lot of these people, because there are just so many people. And Dale Drennan, we're going to do a whole show. He's got several blogs, and he has really gotten into the creature features. He gets into both Sasquatch, Loch Ness Monster, all that stuff. And I am into it, but not into the detail of other folks. So Dale is one of these people that I rely on, that when it comes to those kind of topics, he knows everything, and he's really into it. And plus, he's very good at the cartoon aspect of it, too, bringing that into it. And he's one of these people, too, that's willing to take a risk and help other people that need help. And then there's Mary Neal. I was hoping to have her on today, but, the holidays got very rough. She's going to come on, because what she does, she lost her son in a very tragic thing. He was mentally ill, and unfortunately the police killed him. You know how we've had so many tasers and shootings of people that are either confused, ill. I mean, they tasered a guy to death in a nursing home because he refused his meds. Here, I actually watched a guy fall off a bridge in Columbia, Missouri. He got tasered twice, fell off the bridge. The second tasering was not necessary. There's just so much of this going on. But what Mary does, and she does this tirelessly, she has her own radio show, too, that she's on, and she works very hard with the mentally ill. I want you to get to know her. We're going to do more about her. She's on the Free Speak blog, Blogstock. They talk about expanding human rights. It's the National Network in Action. She supports Dr. Floyd Harris and Gene Kennedy in their radio show. They work really hard. Yeah, look up also Justice Gagged, America's Most Censored, Mary Neal. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about this stuff. Like I said, a lot of other people, you stick your neck out, you wind up, you can lose your home, lose your life, lose pets, lose your children. We're going to stick up for this. We're going to stick up for people's rights. We're not going to let people come in your home to count your cats and dogs and pay a cat tax or a dog tax. We're going to be worrying about vaccines. We're going to get Dr. Tenpenny on and some other people because we're really concerned about that. I want you to understand that, especially at this time we're getting flu and pneumonia shots. We got to be very careful. These flu shots, they're shielded these people now, so they don't have any responsibility anymore or fear. And there's mercury in a lot of these. There's squeamish. There's the other drugs in there. Plus, they have live viruses in them. People don't understand that a lot of the cancer we have today is because of the known disaster when they continued to give out the polio vaccine, knowing it had live cancer vaccine, like cancer virus in it, which actually triggered the huge explosion in cancer, which then led to, Nazi Nixon giving out his war on cancer, which was just another one of these full wars and another excuse to transfer trillions of dollars from the taxpayers' money into the pockets of the elite and the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, agro-cabal. So we need to pay attention to this. We're going to go into this stuff in great detail. We're going to work very hard to get this information out to everybody. And I want you to also, you think about what subjects you want to cover in the next few. I want to say hello to Star Schumacher, too, who's got a place out in Tucson. There's a whole lot of people. We're trying to pull things together. And Anita Janes in California, Missouri. She owns Carpe Diem Goats. She sells large guard dogs and goats. She also has some cheese from the goats and some milk occasionally. She's actually going to she's been very, very sick with renal kidney failure. So there's some people that really do need our prayers, but also they're trying to work hard. We're going to have Ronald Patrick Marriott on. He and I are talking about it because he's doing mantle energy, which he sees as a way. He's worked very hard with the Tesla formulas and patents. He's looked through this. He sees that as something critical, and so do I. I mean, my patents are in vibratory wind generation, and also, well, they're not completed yet, but the patents are in work for that and the flexible solar panels. But it's a totally different thing that Ronald is doing, and he is actually part of the Marriott family, but he doesn't have all the cush money. But he made a discovery in lightning physics that revealed that the very centerpiece in this reproduction cycle for many things in the universe, along with cleaning clouds, Earth atmosphere, he's named this energy mantle. It's a relativistic perturbation. It's where when hydrogen sits in a high altitude, weightless environment of lightning. It allows a disk of anti-hydrogen fusion to be created, and in the construction process, this fusion creates a ring of carbon, liquid oxygen, cooling the fusion back to carbon sealing and surrounding the two-dimensional 12-foot disk of fused negative energy. This will produce free energy, just like Tesla was talking about. You remember looking at the pictures online of the quarks and the sparks where we're seeing these jets on the skyline as if they just discovered them. Tesla knew about this stuff by his experiments. This is nothing new. Remember, a lot of this stuff ancient people knew about. That's why, like if you read Joseph Patrick Farrell, we've got the Giza, he called it the Giza Death Star. He thinks actually the Great Pyramid was a weapon. But also these pyramids, including the Bosnian pyramids. There are pyramids, tons of them in China. There are pyramids not just in Mexico, but in Peru. There were pyramids in the United States. There's one huge one in Alaska. We're going to get into this. We're going to get into the hidden maps that they wanted to sequester the fact that there were very advanced civilizations way before. Some of them were knocked out by natural things. I think there was a war. I think some people are very right about that. That's probably what decimated the Martian planet, probably broke up, created the asteroid belt. You know, if you look at Phobos, you got problems there when the Russian probe even gets close, it gets shot down. You got other planets that look just like the Death Star in Star Wars. I want to extensively get into studying the 9. We're going to shake them up. They still exist. There's new 9. We're going to take them on and say, we want you to come on and talk to us. Because if you don't know about the 9 yet, I want to tantalize you. Peter Levenda's got some stuff in that in his books about sinister forces. Look that up, first of all. Google him. We're going to try to get him on, too. He's got incredible books. He's been on the Bite Show. I really want you to look into George Ann Hughes. George Ann Hughes does a great job with the Bite Show. He's interviewed a lot of people. I really recommend Heinrich Penrich's Red Ice Radio out of the west coast of Sweden. They have done some incredible interviews. You get the first hour free. I think you have to pay for the second hour. First hour is always awesome anyway. And he has other interviews on there. There's some other people I know that they've been contacting me. And over the next couple weeks, we're going to bring other people on from other shows to let them get things out. It's important that we share. There should be healthy competition between shows. It should be not tearing each other apart. We're not going to collude either like the lamestream media. We're not going to take talking points. We're not going to get press releases from people. We're going to create our own news. We're going to look into this stuff, do our own research. I love doing research, but if there's anybody else out there that wants to help, feel free. If you've done some research, you want us to discuss it, we can do that. I want you to think about all that. I want you to work hard. But it's fun. Don't get discouraged and don't think it's all negative. Like I said, we have solution. There's mantle out there. There's patents out there. There's solar panels out there. We're getting more and more of these things. You know, Germany produces 40% of its energy now that way. And there's no reason we can't have every parking lot have solar panels on the roof, have wind turbines and wind vibratory things on those parking lots, on the highways. There's no reason why we don't have kinetic panels down on dance floors, on highways creating energy. We don't have to be dependent on the petroleum industry. That is by design. It's an agenda we don't have to fall for. And don't be believing these dooms that, oh my God, there's too many people. Really? No. It's how they're distributed and how they're cared for and how too many people are dependent on the system by design and dependent on each other. We can be independent yet still help each other. That's the goal. Be independent as much as you can. And yes, at the same time, you also have to open your heart and be able to help other people too. That's where we're going with this as a positive thing and to care about people. And, you know, that's the big thing that I really hope that everybody can take some thoughts about this, that it does matter what goes on, and it does matter what you do. Everything matters. I'm going to play a little tune here for a second. I'm going to play probably 2. This one is Russ Huddleston and Robert Smith Jr. called Family Vacation. It's just a little ditty. It's just a little cute. Once again, this comes from the free, not-profit digital library offering free and legal downloads, and it's from the WFMU radio folks. And please feel free to visit them, and if you have any music...
While longer and your vacation starts. I'm getting home, Mother. Hungry.
We should be pretty close right now. The agent said it was about 12 miles from Highway 10, and that was Highway 10 back there.
But you know we should have asked for better directions at the last gas station.
Listen, I've never gotten us lost before.
Mommy, I'm cold.
Okay, Debbie, I'll put the top up.
Never mind, Mike. Debbie can come up and sit between us.
That was just a little fun diddly over there on the free site. And also, I want to remind you guys, if you have some new music yourself that you've produced and you want us to play it, we're willing to do that. I've got some great friends, everything from concert pianist in Russia, some wonderful woman in Moscow. And there's another gal that came over from the Slavic country. She's now over here in the United States. I also have some country western folks. I have Nick that does some electrical stuff. We're going to try to put that on there. I've got some people that do rap. We're going to make sure we avoid any of the ASCAP problems. Like I said, that's why I'm using this stuff today. And I'm going to play one more little ditty. This one is called Amagamaguchi. It's the Helix Nebula. It's another one of the free songs off of WFMU. And when that completes, I'm going to bring on Chrissy McMahon. She does Alchemy on 3 different radio networks. I've done several shows with her. We're going to do a little bit of talking, and we're going to surprise you with some things, and we're going to talk about some things we're going to do together, because we've done shows that are international. I mean, I've tried to be on the shows that are in New Zealand and England and in Canada and in Africa and in the Middle East, so that we can all contribute and share with each other. So I'm going to play this little ditty, and then I'll bring Chrissy in.
Can you hear me?
That was Anamanaguchi with Helix Nebula. Once again, that's from the Free Music Archive over at WFMU, the most renowned free-form radio station where you can get non-profit digital library offering free and legal MP3s. And until we get ASCAP, we're going to be doing that unless you guys start giving me some free music that you've created yourself. And now Chrissy's about to come on. Are you there, Chrissy?
Yes, I am, Carolyn.
Hey, why don't you take a second, tell everybody about your current show. I've been on there with you, and I know Nulty's been on, and we've got a bunch of people, so why don't you give a shout-out to them and let everybody know about that, and then we'll talk a little bit about some other things after you kind of give a little bit of an introduction, if you can.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. I have a program on awakeradio.us that's called Alchemical Connections, and I also simulcast on shazizradio.com and weroar.ws. So I'm all over the place, and I interview some exciting authors. Recently had Liam Schiff, the author of Official Stories. I have scheduled Alfred Labramont Weber. I think he's not coming on until January, but we've had schedule problems. But just different interesting people. Carolyn and I have done a show with Fernando Vossa and Ronald Marriott and talked about free energy and just some amazing people talking about some amazing things. So just want to give a shout out to my host and administrators at awakeradio.us and shazizradio.com. For their opportunity to get on the air and share this information and to meet a bunch of wonderful, amazing people who are all committed to getting the truth out and helping to wake up people to what's going on around the world.
Can you mention, let's see, there's Nulty, there's Steve, why don't you want to throw out their names for us? I'm probably
Okay. Well, Shaziz Radio has Knights of the Round Table, and it's an energy show, and it incorporates the talents of several people. We have Ken Anderson and Cultus Negrand, a tag team of guys who are creating alternative energy devices. Right now, they're working with Shaziz, the owner of Shaziz Radio, to create an intercontinental transmission on a Tesla coil. So they hope to have that done in the beginning of 2014. We have the Muddy Mudman, who is the creator of some amazing wind turbine energy devices, and he's currently selling one on eBay. I'll have to get that link for you. And we also have Steve Hope, who you and I have chatted with several times, and I haven't heard from since you and I talked to him. So what he's up to, but he was one of the originals from Awake Radio, and I think he's over on MSI Radio. But yeah, we also have some pretty amazing people at Awake. We have Granada Steve and Paula Mathers, who are the administrators. There's True Seeker 22, my good friend Pamela Covington. We have quite a few new people that have joined. We have Lisa and Al for Transmission Mission. They're in Canada, and they're bringing a lot of Aboriginal news and also talking about the fracking situation in Canada. We have some other people. Let me get the show. We have a new guy. I don't even know if he's on the schedule yet. Alan, somebody or other. Tony Gosling. We have the No State Project with Mark Stevens. We have Capricorn Radio with James Swaggart, who is really creating a good name for himself. We have John Suglides. We have, let me see, I don't even know, Organic Nudes with Cab Waters, who does a lot of political rants with a lot of interesting people. And we have Shaziz and his wife Beverly, who simulcast on Saturday mornings. Beverly does a hope message, and we have we don't have the new guy on the schedule yet. We have Reality Bites. We have what's that other really one? The Unpenned Show with Paul and Andy. That's really they mix music, topical stories in the news, and they give a wonderful presentation on the need for really opening our minds and expanding our consciousness to what's going on around us. And they use sarcasm in a sense, but the way they put their show together, they really take a lot of time to bring a full 2 hours of exciting presentation of why we need to pay attention to what's going on in the news. So I don't know. I don't know if I missed anybody but the new guy, and I'm not sure what his name is.
Well,
we have Liberty Beacon too with my good friend. Geez, I forget his name, but you can look it up. The Liberty Beacon, and he does that with Paula. Paula hosts him on the radio station, and it's usually a long 1 hour rant about vaccinations, GMOs, something that he's come to terms with that's happening in our paradigm, and he gets on his soapbox and tells you what for.
You guys
so Roger Laundrie, that's his name, and he's a very exciting, very energetic speaker.
You guys do a great job. I know I've picked up since we had our 18-hour marathon that one weekend in September.
Shout from the mountain.
That's it. I actually we've had a lot of discussions with Ronald Marriott, so he actually I've actually found a place in Old University he might be getting some people to, some backers, some patrons to get a hold of, because that way we could actually do some seminars there, because it's an empty university right now and the town is desperate for jobs, so it's kind of a win-win situation where we help out a town that's lost its university and it's still vibrant, it's still an old college town that wants to stay that way, so we're working on that right now. It's kind of exciting. I know I'm trying to get closure with what I'm doing with. I've got some people help me. I mentioned Mitch earlier, and he's got some folks trying to help me that we can resolve things in St. Louis, because like I said, I've even had the fire at the house now. We've got to get everything resolved and get closure, and it does look like maybe we can get some justice with the right help. And there's a lot of people out there in the same boat, and I know you're going to be coming on occasionally. I want you to come on and give your piece. And the thing is, what's really important, too, is to let people know that, there are lots of alternate radio out there. And that's the one really nice thing about Art doing this, for, putting on other shows and letting people have a chance, and using his name to kind of give a little bit of a flag to things that, we don't have to listen to just the lamestream media. We don't have to just take the pablum and the BS and the talking points and the talking heads. We can think for ourselves. What's really neat about the internet radios, most of them are interactive, which is great. When I was a kid, I grew up in St. Louis. We used to have a program called At Your Service on the CBS radio network, which was one of the most incredible radio stations. It's one of the reasons I love radio. It had Bob Hardy and Rex Davis and some wonderful people. They literally filled the day with At Your Service. They would interview generals and senators, representatives, to get what's going on here? What are we doing here? So, they would actually call the people up, and back then these people were still nervous enough, so a senator would actually get on the phone and talk to the guy live, and then citizens could call in and talk to him. If there was something happening in Vietnam, he'd call the general up. I remember that as a kid thinking, wow, this is amazing. These guys had the chutzpah to do this, the kahunas. And the guy who ran the station was there 20 hours a day. So, you have to do that kind of thing. But unfortunately, when he died, they replaced him with somebody, and then we got 8 hours of Rush Limbaugh, both live and in recordings. So the local and the news shows disappeared, and a lot of that went away. And I think right now we're finding that more on the internet, because it's so hard. There's so many canned shows on the AM and FM dial. All the music is canned and programmed. That's why I'm kind of having some fun using the radio, the free stuff, and asking people to send theirs, because I've got a lot of neat people on my page that are artists and people that they create their own. And I want Norio Hayakawa to come on and play his, because he's great. He's a Japanese American who teaches Spanish and plays country music. He writes his own. He does incredible stuff. Matter of fact, I was going to try to get him for the next show, because he also has done a lot of research on the Dulce, whatever was going on in New Mexico. There's so much theories about what was going on in Dulce, whether it's really an alien base or whether it's is it a Fourth Reich Nazi base? Are they doing, is it a Dr. Moreau type thing, or actually is it an alien type thing? And there's all kinds of things going on, and he's done a lot of research on the underground tunnels. And we're going to get into that in the next couple months. We got 4 times a month. We'll be on once a week on Fridays from 9 to midnight Central Time, and we're going to sit there and we're going to get into the UFO issue, but we're not just going to get into it as in saying, I want people to call in, and we're open lines where we're going to say, what did you see, what have you felt, what have you experienced, but also I think we need to debate what exactly some of all this is. I mean, I think my own self that some of the UFO and the USOs, the submersibles underwater, because I know enough Navy people, there's constantly stuff being seen underwater as well, that, are these things extraterrestrial? Are they our own stuff? Are they Fourth Reich Nazi stuff that never gave up? Are these aliens? Are they interdimensional? Are they extra-dimensional? Are they, people time traveling? We'll get into all of that and try to discuss that. And you missed what I was saying earlier because I was taping it, Chrissy. We did get into the alternative energy, and we're going to really hit the solution button hard every week to try to get people to understand that there are solutions. Tesla had them. There were ancient technology that's been deliberately suppressed. Just like I mentioned earlier, that 1904, that Tesla was showing a Wi-Fi telephone back then. Why did we have to wait to the 80s?
Right. And I'm watching the John Searle story, Ralph Ring, just refreshing myself on all this wonderful information of the technologies that are already available. And could you just give me a link to your to the radio show, because I don't have a link, and I wanted to make sure we have listeners.
That's a good idea. And right now, what people need to do is you just go to www.artbell.com. He's got all the information on his. You go right to his website. Keith Rowland has done an extraordinary job of getting the website up. He's got the Wormhole, which is he actually designed the Fast Blast for another show. So that'll be available when we're actually doing the interactive show. So it's a one-way, just like Fast Blast. It's Wormhole. As you write the question, send it in, they get it, they'll look at it. It's really an extraordinary thing. I'm also going to be doing the Facebook thing where I am going to be looking at the Facebook if people want to chat me there. And I'm going to get my my webpage finished by the next show, next Friday. And on there, we'll have a chat where we can at least pay attention to what's going on. I mean, we're probably not going to be as much interactive because it tends to be a little bit distracting and can kind of lose track of where you're at when you're doing the show. So we're going to be a little bit careful with that. But we're also going to have, I'm going to try to set it up where we can do a little bit of Skype where occasionally, especially if a guest recommends somebody and we get that person, a fan, they want to say, hey, I want to listen to so-and-so. Like I said, we're going to be both doing science, paranormal, but then also entertainment stuff. So we want to bring somebody in. You recommend them, you can come on as a co-host and actually sit in. And on some nights, we'll just do the lounge where, we'll have some people call in on Skype and we'll have them tied in and we can all kind of have a lounge around and talk about it and see what we can do and come up with solutions. And we're going to try to have as much energy as possible on these Friday nights so people can look forward to it. It's a time where people want to relax on a Friday night, but they can kick back, have some coffee, have some Earl Grey, have a pint next to them, have some bitter ales or something, or a nice dark beer. I could use a Marzen myself right now. We could all sit back, relax, and share some information, but still have enough energy to keep going. And that's the big thing, is we are going to discuss the reality of things, because we are losing our rights. We're going to stand up for those. We're going to stand up for, the people that have already lost their rights and given up things. But we're also going to give solutions. We're not going to be doom and gloom. We're going to be positive here because it takes positive energy. We have to share that with each other. It takes life and love. And you got to shake off the fear. None of this fear porn. None of this negativity. We really have to fight hard. We're going to get into some unusual stories, too, because I know I wanted to mention today, I thought it was fascinating. Jim Mars posted it up. And Daniel Towsey just sent me a Facebook message. He's at work, so he can't come on right now while we're taping this during the day, Friday, before the show tonight. That he's got some extraordinary pictures on his page on Facebook. That's Towsey, Towsey, Daniel J. He's been taking pictures of the moon, and I'm telling you, it's going to shake you up when you see this. And then several of us have found some physicists have posted, but only in very scientific things and jargon that's, it's hard for even them to understand. That images of the moon appear to have altered. That not only has the moon started to do more rotating, things have actually appeared to have what was a crater that was appearing would have been on the north end of the moon is now slightly closer to a 2 o'clock setting or a 3 o'clock setting instead of at noon. And there's other images, and something is going on. I think a lot of us feel it. I mean, I like Jim Marrs said, Al Gore's full of baloney, but it's not human beings doing it, and it's not just global warming, though our weather is going crazy, but ours is a combination. I mean, they're obviously doing the chemtrails, and they're obviously doing HAARP, and HAARP is not just ours, but the Chinese and the Indians have one, the Israelis have one, there's the UE has one, and then the one up in Norway that did that spiral when King Obama got his fake peace award when that was going on. There's something going on because the planets, almost all of them have been changing. Saturn and Jupiter have had more red spots show up. They're also their rings have altered, and Martian their north and south pole have changed in their dimensions. Our north and south pole have changed. Of course, we're actually in the middle of a tilt, so we're actually going to shift our polar axis too. We're losing a couple percentage degrees every day, so something is going on. And of course, the earthquake at Bande Aceh actually knocked us off 0.3 degrees, which is actually pretty big off an axis. But we're having these major things. Everything is record breaking, so something is going on. Venus has changed its temperature. Mercury has changed. So, I mean, there's a whole thing going on. We're having more comets. We keep seeing more of these in the sky now. I know everybody's wondering if there's a Planet X or a Nibiru. I don't know. I don't know what to think of that. I know most of the time these comets tend to fizzle out, and I love Richard Hoagland dearly, but I haven't seen one of these come out as the major thing, though I really do believe that he's onto something with the 19.5 and the technology, the numerology that he's gone into. But whether these are spaceships and stuff, of course, a lot of us just want to make sure it happens while we're still alive. But we hope to get into all this stuff. Right now, we've got looks like about 15, 20 minutes left. And what do you say you were doing this Friday? You've got a show this weekend too, right?
Yeah, well, I do a show on Sunday and Thursday, but this coming December 5th, I'm going to have an alternative energy seminar, and I just wanted to invite everybody. It's going to be live on the air, and it's also going to be live in LaPorte, Pennsylvania. And I have a flyer I sent to Carolyn. She can post it, but it's going to incorporate the genius of Fernando Bosa, who just came from the Breakthrough Energy Movement conference in Denver this year, and will have a wealth of knowledge to share with the audience. And it will be recorded and archived. And then we're going to start with Liam Sheff, who is a comedian, really, by heart. And he wrote official stories. And one of the things that he talks about in his book is peak oil. Now, he's not really sold on 0 point or over unity energy. So he doesn't really buy into that. He thinks it's kind of airy-fairy. So he's kind of our skeptic who's going to start the show, who is going to talk about alternative energy, but from the viewpoint of the corporations that, are really downplaying the benefits of solar and wind and promoting nuclear and natural gas and all these other fossil fuels that we're trying to really break away from. Then we're going to have a local, his name is John Trollo, who is going to present information of what he's experienced. He's like our own hometown Josh Fox from Gasland, and he's gone across country before he even saw the movie to really find out what's going on with the fracking situation. And right here in Pennsylvania, where I'm at, in Sullivan County, we border with Bradford County, and Bradford County is one of the bigger fracking counties of Pennsylvania, and the issues that they're having. So he's going to bring that part into the conversation, and he's also going to talk about alternatives for this area. Then we're going to go to Cultus Negron, and he has produced every type of alternative energy device from HHO systems to the Tesla coil. And as I said earlier, he's going to try to do the intercontinental transmission between Shaziz himself and Kent, his cohort. And he'll also at the beginning of the year, I don't know, at the end of December, January, he's going to start back doing his radio show. So we'll look forward for that. And we can have him come on and chat with us as well. And then Fernando Bossa will be the keynote speaker, and he'll take us from the reality base, from where we are, where our feet are at the ground, what are the possibilities, to consciousness and beyond the cosmos, because he's involved with all kinds of healing energy and just bilocation and you know, all kinds of amazing stuff that he's really trying to get people to wrap their heads around and understand that these things are possible, things we've forgotten. And that's the same thing that Ralph Ring and his wife talk about in their videos, that this is all information we've forgotten, and we need to come back. We need to get out of this materialistic and mechanical belief system that we work under for the last couple thousand years. We've been entrained, and come back to nature. And that's why I'm so grateful I'm in the mountains right now. I'm just having a ball here, and everybody's invited. It's December 5th. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. It'll be probably broadcast on Google Plus, one of the Hangouts, and also hoping to simulcast with awakeradio.us and shazizradio.com, and have the live presentation here at the DCNR building on Route 220 in Dewshore. And it's a beautiful, it looks like a brand new lodge they built. It's just an absolutely beautiful building. And we're going to have a wonderful time. It's going to be a 3-hour program, and it will be archived, so we'll be able to share that. And hopefully maybe we can even play the pods, you know, on air here on the Art Bell Network. So thank you, Carolyn, for this wonderful opportunity. I'm just really excited, and hope everybody can make the show, the seminar, on December 5th. It's a Thursday evening from 6 to 9. And listen to my show Thursdays and Sundays on awakeradio.us and also shazizradio.com. A wonderful gang of people committed to bringing truth and sharing peace message and love, and just wanting to wake up people and help them to understand what they're facing in this wonderful matrix we live in. And it's just quite amazing times. And Carolyn, you've been such a wonderful friend, and you've been through so much in the last 4 years that I wish I could give you a big hug and just bring you here with me, because you would love it here. You and the cat, you'd have a great time. But Missouri is, I don't know how many miles away from Pennsylvania, and it's going to take us a lot of ingenuity to get together and really come a lot closer and start changing the world the way we want to see it. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, we're all going to get together. I mean, I'm going to finally get this place. I think, things happen for a reason, and I've learned a lot. I have to say that. Where I'm at now, I'm learning a lot of things I didn't expect. I'm in a situation I didn't expect. But that's okay. I'm learning from it. And, I still don't know all the parameters of the fire at my house. I don't know how exactly that's going to work out, but looks like I'm going to get some help with that, which wouldn't have happened if I wasn't at where I'm at. So things do happen for a strange reason, and possessions are just that. They're things you possess, and I don't want to lose things. I hope I didn't lose all my family photos and whatnot that were in the house, and I had enough survival stuff to last about 6 years. So I had a whole Sears hardware store. I hope I haven't lost everything. But, you got to realize those things, you can't take them with you anyway. And
right.
We're here to learn, we're here to share, and here to teach. So I'm trying to be patient, trying to deal with things as they are, and always try to turn every negative into a positive. And I think that's the one thing I mentioned earlier in the show, that, like I said, anything good about me came from my parents. So, they taught me. They were the greatest generation. They went through depression. They went through wars. My mother was an early widow at 20. She also had been part of a lot of people know me, that I'd actually had done a lot of research on this pedophile child sex slavery thing. She was actually a victim of that herself, plus my aunts and my uncle. So it's like they've been through so much, and you realize, what you have. It's just like with the holiday. You have to be grateful for what you do have. Try not to get yourself down with the pessimism. I know I've gotten a lot of notes from people this week that are depressed. Holidays tend to do that to people that are alone. People just have to realize that we have each other thanks to things like Google Plus and Facebook. And even though, yes, they do data mining, and yes, they do it for marketing, but it also gives us an opportunity to share worldwide. I really do. Facebook's probably keep my sanity through my exile. But to me, it's just incredible to see people, whether, like I said, that's what's good about your show. And like when I did Type 1, you got people in Australia, people in England, people in the United States, people in Canada, people in, I've had people on from all over the place. I've got tons of friends in Romania because I'm such a night owl. I guess they're all vampires. But
yeah, there's some amazing people, and it is an international show, and it's an international programming, and we do have all our hosts at awakeradio.us have come from South Africa. We have Australians, we have Canadians, we have people from Ireland, from Scotland, from England, just touching on every continent, basically all around the globe, and we're just so excited. It's just absolutely amazing to be alive at this time, and I'm so grateful that you brought out. Yeah, there is a lot of loneliness, and it can be very difficult, especially around the holidays. But any day in this paradigm is difficult for a lot of people, especially waking up to what is happening in your government with religion, social structures, and science and all the changes. It's so mind-boggling, but know that we're here for each other, that we're here to help each other get through this and to understand and make sense of it. And there are wonderful things on the horizon. There's wonderful things happening now. And at my alternative energy show seminar on December 5th, Fernando Bossa is going to bring that information from the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference, which I heard was just a phenomenal event. He's going to bring that information and he's going to share it with us and keep the momentum going. So it's like when you first come into the paradigm of information for this matrix and you're like, wow, does anybody else know this? And you try to talk to people and they don't want to listen. Well, the same thing with the Breakthrough Energy Movement. They found out that there's hundreds of thousands of people all around the globe who are working on these devices, who are making progress. And even Carolyn herself has gotten ready to go with a patent with a energy device. So, wonderful, amazing people are doing wonderful, amazing things and trying to really change our situation so we can have this free energy technology so we don't have to be burdened by paying all these prices for this fossil fuel that costs so much money to get. I found out that the tar sands takes 3 barrels of oil to make 1 barrel of tar sand oil. How insane is that? How do they sell that to the public? Well, they don't tell people anything. And we have to become informed. We have to go out and do the research ourselves and understand what's really happening. So, I want to applaud Dark Matter Radio, and we want to applaud people like Carolyn, Rose Goyda, and many alternative radio stations like awakeradio.us and shazizradio.com for taking the initiative for whatever reason, however it started, knowing that it wasn't even part of them anymore. It had grown beyond ourselves, and we just knew we had to do this. We just knew that this was the only option we had, going from all those late nights of looking up this information and trying to research and read and cram and watch videos and talk to people and try to find out, get a handle on what's happening. And a lot of people work day jobs and have families and try to have a normal life. And there's no normalcy in this chaotic environment, but there is a lot of hope, there's a lot of joy, and there's a lot of prosperity happening now and coming towards us on the horizon. 2013 has been a difficult year for a lot of people, but I think, as you said, it's also been a time to really, in retrospect, look at the amazing changes it made to yourself and to the people around you and the things that you've gained as a result of going through these challenges. So my hat's off to you, Carolyn. You're just an amazing woman. Your resume is just phenomenal. The things you've accomplished, the people you've been involved with and worked with, for you to be doing this now I know it's just a labor of love, but you put your heart and soul in it, and the information you put out is so phenomenal, and I'm just so honored to have been asked to be a part of this. It's just amazing situation and amazing opportunity. So thank you.
Well, and I really appreciate you coming on. We're gonna wrap up here pretty soon because we're taping this for tonight, so I want you guys to understand we're gonna start doing the live shows. I'm not sure about next week, but definitely by the week after that, we're going to be doing the live shows that are interactive, and I'll be back on Chrissy's show. She's going to be on my show. Like I said, Dale Drinnen will be on talking about creature features. We're going to have John Barbour back on. He was on today by tape. We're going to have some other guests on. I think Joseph Farrell's going to come on, Jim Mars. We have Robin Falco's going to stop in. We're going to have a lot of people, and plus we're going to get people from around the globe. That's one of the things we want to strive. And I want to apologize to folks that this one is a little bit rough today. I did have the power go out. I'm in a trailer at the moment today. So last night while I was putting the show together, the power went out and it shut down my iMac, and I literally had to not only reboot the system, I had to reload the operating system. So I lost some of the tools I would have been using. So I've kind of had to do this a little bit on the fly, thanks to Skype, thanks to QuickTime Player. I was going to do some GarageBand stuff, but and some different mixers to put things together, but some of those tools got lost also, and I only had time to get the operating system back online and some of the quick tools that I could do. And luckily I had, the information from John Barbour and whatnot to put together, and Chrissy was around, and we have so much more we're going to do that our Fridays are going to be packed, folks. It's going to be so full of energy that I do want you to understand that it's not going to be, all tapes. This is going to be live. We're going to have some tape segments because since we do want to draw from people around the globe, we have to deal with, other people's schedule. I tend to be a night owl, which is why I wanted the 9 to 12 slot Central Time. But some other people, we have to work with their work schedules. We have to work with their what part of the globe they're on. Any aliens want to contact us, we'll work around their schedules as well. Any interdimensional people, just give us a holler or tap us on the shoulder. And we're going to cover a lot of things. I talked about that a little bit earlier. I'm going to try to wrap this up now so we can get this package off and so that it can get on tonight and properly on board. And if you have any problems recording any of this or listening to this, let us know. Keith Rowland is an amazing man. He's working with Art Bell to get the Dark Matter situation up and running. He's, like I said, he's got Wormhole going, so we're going to have a really active, fun show on Fridays. And I want you guys to share your ideas, any suggestions, if there's any guests you want, if you have any music you want us to play, let me know. We're going to do that. If you suggest somebody, we get them on. You get to come on and talk to them as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and try to wrap this up. And I want to thank you guys for listening. And don't forget, I'm on Facebook. I've got all the friends, but we can still follow each other. And there is a Starfire Wolflair page. There will be a website up by next Friday. And there is some YouTube. And this show, of course, will premiere. All the shows will premiere only on Dark Matter on artbell.com. And listen to the shows live when you can and be involved. I think it's important. I want you guys all to be grateful to Art and to Keith. And I think they're doing a heck of a job. And Chrissy, thank you for coming on today.
And thank you. And I have some music for you, and I'm going to try to get in touch with Ben Stewart from Climatica and, the trilogy, and try to see if I can get some of his music. And I have Girl on Top, Karen DiBiase, and some African beautiful music. And if you want it, I'll send it to you. And I got lots of music.
Oh, great. Okay, we'll work that out for next week. I'm going to add a little shout out to Dale Drinnen and to Regis Doucette, two men that have helped me out a great deal. Once again, I'm going to say if my old partner and helper used to once come back, Brett Roshan, he's more than welcome to come on board. We did a lot of work doing other shows. If he wants to help, let us know. And everybody, I've got the kitty cats. You guys got your kits, dogs, your birds, your fish. Give everything a hug, a pat, or a scoot on the tail. And I'm going to wrap this up now, and I'll talk to you later. Chrissy, why don't you just hang on while I go ahead and shut down the audio here. And thank you again, guys. I'm sending this off to Keith. And give me a lot of feedback. Please let me know. And like I said, forgive me for the quality of this particular show. Just getting the operating system back up on the iMac made me happy. And I thank God that QuickTime has its options. And I know that Keith is probably doing more work for me today than he expected and more than I would have asked him to do. And I really appreciate that he's done this. And we're going to do the 3 hours on Friday. We just won't have to do it quite this way. I don't expect to have to upload operating systems every Friday. So thank you again, Chrissy. And thank everybody for listening. And please give me lots of feedback on Facebook tonight. And don't forget, Art Bell is also on Facebook. Let him know that you appreciate what he's doing for everybody. So
thanks, Art Bell. Thank you, everybody at Dark Matter. Awesome. Thank you.